Pearson, host of Star Time, and this is my real voice. Honest, you're hearing it on Rainier Avenue Radio .world.
Should have told her you were sorry.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time, and when I'm not busy tearing the roof off the suckers, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio .world.
Do you want to reach out to the Vietnamese community in Seattle? Just advertise in Người Việt Tây Bắc, that is Northwest Vietnamese News, the longest running Vietnamese language newspaper in our region. Go to nvnorthwest.com.
Join Rainier Avenue Radio from 5 to midnight for Sunday evening sound sessions. Jazz from the cabinets from Big Poppy.
That's right. It's time once again for Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy.
Sergio LaCour's Love Lines.
It's Sergio's Love Lines with Sergio LaCour. Going to the phone lines. Hello, who we talking to?
Sage Prince, Just My Opinion.
This is Sage, and that's just about going to do it for the first half of Just My Opinion.
K-Fox Nightbeat with Nasty Ness Rodriguez.
The beat of the Fox. K-Fox Nightbeat, Nasty Ness.
You know what? You're going to listen from 5 to midnight. Just turn it on and don't stop. DJ Alibaba. The Underground Surround Sound Star Time with Paul Pearson.
Thanks for tuning in. My name is Paul Pearson.
Sunday evening sound sessions on Rainier Avenue Radio. Trust me, you'll be listening the entire time from 5 to midnight. Sunday evening, your sound session on Rainier Avenue Radio.
What's up, everyone? It's your girl, Queen Bree, inviting you to come join me on Clean Greens Living. Broadcasted Tuesdays, 12:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, live right here on Rainier Avenue Radio. On Clean Greens Living, we talk farming, community, and ways to being healthy. So come join me and let's discuss ways to create a healthier you and a healthier community.
Generational wealth. Generational wealth. Generational wealth. What is generational wealth? We asked our communities, and this is what they had to
Generational
say.
wealth, as of right now, it feels very inequitable given the identities that you have versus if you are a person of color or not. To me, for this generation, I'm going to have to work really, really hard for intergenerational wealth to develop, especially with the economic system that Seattle's in right now, more than ever. Having been a Seattleite as well, I hope that we can talk about it more. And glad that this conversation is starting and to consider thinking about it more as a person of color and coming from an immigrant background as well.
This campaign to create awareness to generational wealth is brought to you by the Department of Neighborhood's Generational Wealth Initiative, the Washington Housing Finance Commission, and Rainier Avenue Radio .world. Create your generational wealth for you and the future of your family. Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio .world and the debate for Seattle City Council Position 5. I am your host, Tony B. This is the pre-debate show where we get the opportunity to talk to folks, have a little informal discussion, find out exactly who people are. You know, that's what we're shooting for. And then we get to have guests on the show as well. And definitely, once again, first, we've started this tradition. Alicia Crank. Alicia.
Hi, I'm back again. Guess who's back? You know what's funny is that I'm thinking about that Eminem song right now, and this is actually his birthday.
Oh, is that right?
He is 51 years old, fellow
Wow.
Detroiter.
All right.
Fellow Detroiter.
Well,
So, yeah.
for those of you who are tuning in for the first time and don't know, in addition to being the executive director of Seattle City Club, Alicia is from Detroit.
Yes. Detroit, then Silicon Valley, then here.
Mhm.
And I'm going to tell you why this series of debates is so important to me.
Mhm.
I am giving up going to the Kraken game
Uh-oh.
today. You know, it's the home opener,
Mhm.
and I'm a season ticket holder.
Oh, boy.
But I was like, nope, I'm going to be here for this. So I'll be there on Thursday, but I am here for this because this is important.
So were you a hockey fan when you were in Detroit?
I was. And can I tell you kind of an anecdotal story?
Yes. go ahead.
You know, it wasn't until 0 to 21 I lived in Detroit.
Okay.
Then I went to San Jose, Mountain View, California area. Thought I was only going to be there for 2 years. Turned out to be 18. But I got there and I went to my first, San Jose Sharks game, and people looked at me like I was like an alien because they're like, we didn't know Black people were hockey fans. And I was like, yeah. I'm like, hello, Joe Louis Arena, Detroit Red Wings, downtown Detroit. So it was not a big deal living in Detroit, being a hockey fan. It was actually more accessible than basketball and football at the time, the pro teams, because they were in the suburbs. But the Red Wings played in downtown Detroit.
Now, did you know that Seattle had a team called the Seattle Totems years ago?
Yes.
Oh, you know all about that?
I know that.
Okay, you know a little bit about
I know
Seattle
a
hockey
little
history.
something
I
now.
was playing hockey on roller skates
Yeah.
at 8 years old. Again, one of the few, if not the only, African Americans at that time. But it's an awesome sport.
Yeah, I love it. It's great. I mean, especially because it's just fast acting and you can just like take it. It's better to watch in person than on TV.
Yeah.
Kind of like tennis.
Yeah.
You know, you got to watch it in person. On TV, it's boring.
But anyway.
Yes. Back to the political stuff. So
we are here for the Seattle City Council debate position number 5. The candidates are ChrisTiana ObeySumner and Cathy Moore.
Yes.
This is the last in the series of the debates.
Correct.
And there are some differences in the candidates.
Yes.
What they stand for, what we'll see tonight. But so far, that's what we do know. And this has just been, I think, an incredible opportunity to inform the community, engage folks in what's happening right now. And what have you seen as we started from position 1 at South Seattle Community College?
Correct.
Now, for Rainier Avenue Radio, we did the District 2 debate at the Columbia City Theater, and we did it a little differently. I knew that our community was going to be enthused, so I knew that they wouldn't sit on their hands, and so they were shouting stuff.
I was watching. Yeah, I watched
it. District 3 debate at the Broadway, another wonderful District 4 at the University of Washington.
Yes.
Here we are. North Seattle is like, when we started this, I learned something. It's North Seattle College, not North Seattle Community College, which is what I was calling it. So those are the series debates. How do you look at where we're at now? And again, I'm going to ask you, is this success to you? I know we still have some more things to do. Has it turned out how you like it to?
It's turned out better than I could have expected, because I didn't know what to expect, right? But I just knew that I wanted to make sure that we did these debates in their districts. And that was super important to be able to do. So to that end, when you say, what have I noticed from the first to this one, is seeing the different types of people that have been coming to these, and also hearing from them kind of in the background as they're walking away going, I'm so happy this was in my district. Because they're so used to having to go downtown, or some place where it's always the usual suspects. So being able to bring it to the people, I think, has made such a difference. So for me, that is success in and of itself.
So before we get going a little bit, I haven't really done this before because we've been hyper focused on what we're talking about. But let me give you the opportunity for some shameless self-promotion about partners involved and engaged in this process.
So you know what? We could not have pulled this off without our partnerships. I'm going to start first with Comcast. They came through with the funding to be able to pay for most of this, because it's not an inexpensive lift for us to be able to do as a 2-person nonprofit, if you will, at City Club.
Now, if you go back to the pre-debate show, we talked about some of the ins and outs of putting this together, and then we thorough on this.
Right?
Anyway.
And then the Seattle colleges, again, being able to have 3 of the 4 debates on their campuses, because they were in those districts, has been wonderful for us to be able to partner with, and hopefully we'll continue this partnership when we do the statewide debates next year. And then our media partners, such as you, and King 5, Fox 13, Crosscut, KUOW, just Converge. All of you guys, this was a huge undertaking, and I called in a lot of personal favors to try to make this happen, and I'm so happy that it's worked out.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. Now, I don't know if you want to comment on the candidates, but I'm gonna ask you anyway.
Well, I cannot technically do that. What I will say is that I've been impressed with all of them, and I'm sure I'm going to be impressed tonight too, because they're all running for the first time.
Yeah.
So there's a newness for them. And again, debates are different than candidate forums and town halls because they just get one question each. They don't get to kind of cross talk with each other or kind of get pushed to say more. So I think this has been a good training exercise for these new candidates as well to understand what those differences are and how to be better prepared.
Wonderful answer. I'm still trying to get in your Kool-Aid a little bit.
Yeah.
Have you noticed, is there a candidate in any district that you have said, I like where they're coming from. I like what I'm hearing, the way I think this is a solid. Again, I know where you're at, but I'm just,
I know what you're trying to do.
Things, and so I would like to get your opinion as the person. Is there a candidate to you in any district that, for whatever reason, you've just said, I like that?
Honestly, I mean, it's going to sound like a cop-out, but I feel like that about all of them because, and here's why.
Okay.
I live in Edmonds. So I haven't been involved in like Seattle politics, especially on the district level before.
That's what gives you that special insight.
That's what I'm saying. So I've learned so much listening to each of them. Of course, some are going to be more prepared than others. It's just the way that the ball bounces. Yeah. But I think they made it to the general for a reason. Yeah. There was something that they said that resonated with a certain percentage of people. So I've learned a lot about even the democracy vouchers. I was like, what the heck are those? I hadn't heard of those before. So I think being able to kind of hear by district what the specific issues are and how it impacts one district versus the other, they've all given me that learning lesson. All right. So, yeah.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. It's me, Tony B. This again is Seattle City Council District Debate number 5. This is Alicia Crank, Executive Director of Seattle City Club. So we have to talk a little bit about Seattle City Club, who Seattle City Club is. I know we've done this before.
Well, that's fine. Yeah. You're helping me get my elevator pitch together, so I appreciate it. So we are a 43-year-old nonprofit focused on civic engagement and civil discourse. And we do a lot of different civic engaged programs. The one that people know us more for is Civic Cocktail, which we do once a month down at the Collective Seattle. And it's cocktails involved. So if you're into that, you should come. And we talk about different topics that relate to the community at large. So not even just specifically Seattle, but the region. And I'm the first woman of color to be the ED. And I've been on for a little bit over a year now. And it's been a fun, interesting, and in a good way, stressful experience. Okay. Because you get to learn stuff along the way. And I like it.
All right. Well, you know what? I'm going to give you the opportunity to say, for the last time, whatever you'd like to say to our listening audience right now, Alicia. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, I'm going to say, I want to give props to you. So I'm going to say thank you, Rainier Avenue Radio, for partnering with us on this project. The energy that you've brought to this and your team has brought to this has been amazing. Guys, there's a DJ playing outside right now. I'm about to go get my dance on before, everything happens. And again, I just like how this has created community partnerships. Like even our friends at Black Coffee Northwest, they have a cafe here on campus. They usually close at 3, but they reopen just for us. Yeah. Just for those that are coming down here for the debate. That just doesn't happen often. So when we can support each other in doing this kind of work, we can all find a place to fit in when it comes to civic engagement.
All right. Thank you, Alicia.
You're welcome.
We're going to get John over here. Oh, okay. We're going to get John over here to talk with us. He is one of the moderators. We get to find his unique questions, experience, and just get to know him a little bit personally. You know how this works by now. I'm going to get in his little mix a bit, find out more about him. This is a KIRO. This is one of the individuals who, for the entire district, will be asking questions. And I think that's a pretty big deal. Join me. It's Hopperstead.
That's right.
Yeah, How are you doing, John?
Good, Tony. Good to be here.
And Fox 13.
That's right.
Let's start off by talking a little bit about your background. And I'll throw this first one out there and make it real easy. Where are you from, and what got you interested in the field that you were in today?
Well, I'm originally from Lake Forest Park, which when I grew up was part of North Seattle. Now it's its own city, but I basically grew up in North Seattle. So that's I got tapped on the shoulder by my news director because he knew that, and he knew that I know some of the issues and been around it growing up. Of course, I've been in journalism for, I don't want to say how long, decades. So I've always been interested in what is happening politically and in the community. So it was a good fit.
What got you interested in journalism?
I wanted to be a writer. I was just interested in learning. I've always loved learning new things. And I think that's what journalism ultimately is about, is learning something new and then conveying that to your listeners or your viewers or what have you. And I've never stopped that. As old as I'm getting, I still love it every day. If I learn something new, I'm like, yes, that's a good day. So I've always been interested in the writing side of it. And then in college, I was going to be a newspaper writer, but I kind of stumbled into TV, and next thing you know, it's a career in front of the camera.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio. If you're hearing background noise, it's because there's music playing. There's folks coming in. This is the pre-debate show. Allows us to have a little more informal conversation. Now, in these debates, have you ever hosted a debate before?
I have, but it's been a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is generally journalists who are the moderators.
True.
And you said you have a journal. Why is that? I have my reasons why I think that it is, but why do you think that it is generally journalists who host these types of debates?
Yeah, I think it's because, generally we're the ones that are writing and conveying information to people on a daily, weekly basis, whether it's broadcast or through newspapers and magazines, and we're covering these topics that these candidates are going to talk about. I mean, I cover every day. We're talking about crime, and we're talking about affordability and the cost of paying rent. So these topics are kind of swirling around our heads at all times. Plus, we're trained, and just through doing this job over the years, on how to ask questions and try to get some answers, as you do as well.
Yeah. So, see, you have business people, you have social service people, all impacted by our community, all part of our communities. This is just an observation. I'm not saying journalists are on a pedestal. I'm just saying that usually in these circumstances, it is journalists, who are doing the asking of the questions.
True. Sometimes I would like to hear, other voices, but this is what we have, and you get tapped on the shoulder, say, come do this. You say, all right, I'll do it.
Now, that's why I have you sitting here. Because of the thing that I said before, you're representing a community. What do you do? How did you prepare for this particular debate to make sure that the questions of District 5 were going to be prominent in this discussion, or did you do that?
I did. I mean, I looked into the candidates and their backgrounds, and then obviously the topics and the discussions that everybody's having within Seattle, the larger community, and then also District 5, some of the specific issues that folks in District 5 are dealing with. But yeah, I'm taking the knowledge that I've taken in over years, just doing journalism and producing the news, and then my own interests, and kind of melding it all together and trying to come up with some really good questions for these candidates. And I think we're going to hear some good answers tonight.
Make sure that you vote. That's
absolutely
why we're doing this, so that I'm not telling you who to vote for, or what I am saying is find out as much information as you can so that you can become an informed voter.
I would also say that if you're an interested participant in democracy, don't just watch tonight and make your decisions based on what these two candidates say during this debate.
Okay.
You need to do a little more investigating. And I think we should all do that in our lives.
Very good.
No matter who the candidates are.
John, there are some differences in the candidates' positions. That hasn't always been the case during this series of debates that we're doing. how does that impact and affect you? Do you like, okay, we're gonna have some get into some conversation here, and we're going to heat this thing up a little bit, or again, for you, I mean, this is the course that I'm on, this is how are you gonna deal tonight with the candidates that we have? We haven't really had any serious problems of folks over talking each other. There has been some interaction. There's been a couple of cases where folks have made it clear that these are the differences between. What are you looking to do? What are you trying to get out of this? To tell the folks right now, when the time was, John's asking the question, how do you plan to get out? What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to get to the truth of the matter. And, you're right. With these two candidates, a lot of things they agree on. And I think we've seen that with a lot of these candidates, especially the ones where we don't have incumbents coming in here. Nothing to run that platform off of what they've done. But with these two, there are some issues where they differ. And, those are not things that you want to harp on or put all your focus on, but you definitely want to get to the bottom of that with these two candidates, especially when we talk about policing. I know they've got some different issues that they bring to the table. And that's such an important topic that you can't let that go. You've got to kind of hone in on that. So I think the three of us will all have some questions around that topic when they come up tonight, for sure.
I want to give you the opportunity to say anything that you'd like to, in particular, our District 5 listening audience. The debate's going to start at 7 o'clock. Again, John, one of the moderators, thank you for taking the time to join us here on the pre-debate show. Again, a little bit more informal, but an opportunity to find out about you. What would you like to say to the audience right now, having the opportunity to go, this is coming from me?
Well, I just hope that everybody watches and listens. And like I say, this should be not the end of your decision making or the beginning of it. Should be just part of the process. And really listen to what these candidates say. District 5 is an important district and it's large. And we all know there's a ton of issues going on within this district. When we talk about police response times, they're the slowest in the city of Seattle is in District 5. And so there's a lot of concern. There's always, we talk about crime, we talk about affordability, housing, homelessness. These are all topics that you can talk about in any district in Seattle, but in District 5, there's some specifics there that we want to hear about. So I would tell people to listen, have an open ear, open eyes to what these candidates are saying, because one of these two candidates are going to be elected to the Seattle City Council. And it's a very important position. And we know there's a lot of important issues going on right now. And going forward, there will be, and a lot of tough decisions that are going to have to be made. And one of these folks on the stage are going to have to make them. So I would just encourage everybody to tune in, watch the debate, and then use that as a jumping off point to investigate more. So they're making the right decision, because as you said, these candidates, they differ a little bit, but they don't differ a lot. So it's the ability to listen to both of them and make an informed decision. That's what I really hope people do, not just here at Seattle City Council, but in general, when it comes to an election, when it comes to candidates, make an informed decision. Don't pick. I would hope people wouldn't even pick based on party, pick based on all the information they've taken in, so they can make the right choice.
Well, I'm gonna tell you what one of the things I'm looking for is the knowledge of the redistricting and how they handle the questions of how that impacts the community at large. So that's just one of my things.
Yep, that's a good one.
Thank you for joining us, John.
Tony, thanks so much. Great being with you.
Get on them, man.
We will do that. We'll try.
All right, thanks for joining us.
Okay.
We'll see who
Thank you so much.
we've got here. Again, this is Tony B. You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio, and Angela King from KIRO will be joining us, I believe, here right now. Angela.
Tony.
How are you?
I am wonderful. How are you?
Fantastic.
Yes, despite the weather, despite the rain, despite the traffic, everything. We do.
Well, when it was sunny, I would say tan-fastic. But
well, I'm glad you got your tan ahead of time,
but
because
it's still,
we are in the fall dark season.
Yes, it's still good. Well, first of all, awesome to meet you.
pleasure as well.
Thank you for doing this. One of the moderators, one of the things that I want to do initially before we get into some of this stuff and before I get in your mix a little bit is give folks more information about who you are. Where are you from? Share some information about your background.
Absolutely. Well, I've been in the Seattle area, Pacific Northwest for, I'd say at least 3 decades now. Originally a Pasadena, California girl. So
oh boy,
I know, there was a time when you didn't admit you were from California, but I was from Pasadena, California, home of the Rose Bowl. So, folks like me every now and then when one of our teams makes it down to the big stage down there. But I have been in the Seattle news market for coming up on 28 years.
Okay.
And initially started with the TV stations and transitioned to radio about 5 years ago.
What got you interested? I'm just assuming you are interested in journalism.
Well, it's a funny story. I gave my first live broadcast from a cardboard box when I was 5 years old. And so I guess it was my destiny to get into journalism. But for me, it's about, there's a real sense of responsibility in informing our communities. And I take that very seriously. And I also just enjoy writing, storytelling, letting other people be the focus of the conversation rather than trying to be the star of the show. And I think that is so important, especially now in this day and age where it's all about me, social media. A lot of times there's a lot of attention you want to draw to yourself. But I think it's so important to remember that there is a whole world out there that we need to have conversations with, and making sure that those conversations are filled with facts, which is so important right now. It is just so hard to battle disinformation in this day and age.
The Seattle City candidates, Seattle City Council candidates, District 5, ChrisTiana ObeySumner, Cathy Moore. What did you do to prepare yourself as far as your due diligence and finding out who these candidates are, where these candidates stand? Was that important to you for the process of being a moderator for this discussion?
Oh, absolutely. Because as a moderator, we're standing in proxy of the people who live in this community. And you can hear people give talking points left and right. But the voices you really need to listen to, in addition to those vying for a seat on the council, are the people who they will be serving. So it was very important for me to understand not only where the candidates stand on certain issues, but where they come from. What is their background? Where have they stood on previous issues? And it's a little different with newer candidates not having an incumbent, because we're all learning about them for the first time together. So there is a real sense of responsibility to do your due diligence and understand not only where they stand on the issues, but who they are as people, where they come from. That dictates a lot as to what issues are of concern to you as a candidate.
There's a big general election coming next year, president, all the other stuff. This is about the community.
Yes, the most important part of our society.
This is about the community. How do you plan to approach asking questions that get into some of the nuances and some of the bigger issues? They're consistent all over the city.
Correct, yes.
Now, District 5 is different than District 1, is different than District 3, so the answers, some of these questions may be a little bit different. How do you plan on getting in there, asking questions of these candidates, getting answers from the candidates, so that the folks who are taking their time to say, I need help, I don't have time, you know how life is, I'm busy, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I need some answers from the show tonight to help me make a decision. Now, I just talked to John. John said, hey, make sure everybody doesn't just depend on this show, do more due diligence. In a beautiful world, that's the way.
Yes.
Are you thinking in those terms that this may be it? This may be the time that somebody says, I need to figure out who I need to vote for.
Oh, now more than ever, it is important. I mean, you talked about the big general election coming up on November 7th, and just the nature of our politics right now is, I think anyone could agree on, it's pretty fraught. And it is key that you relate as opposed to lecture.
Nicer than I am.
Well, you now there's some candidates you can ask. They may differ with you, but I think the first thing you got to do is be approachable.
Yeah.
Because we are in such a divided state of being right now that okay, I'll be nice. We can talk.
Yeah.
But yes,
well,
we're
on the internet.
Yes.
And so I'm just disappointed in our national politics.
Yeah.
I was disappointed in our local politics.
Yes.
And that since I called it a shit show.
Well, I think a lot of people would agree with you. And a lot of people in our industry would agree with you as well. I mean, it is so hard, not only because of the discord that's going on, but making sure people are telling the voters they are trying to sway the truth. It's easy to get clickbait and to say those little statements that'll get you that little like on Facebook or on X or on whatever medium you prefer to use now. And that's a lot of the way that's one way a lot of candidates are now reaching out to the society and to their communities. Back in the day, I'm trusting you can relate. But you had to hit the pavement.
Yeah.
You have to go door to door.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's so important to be relatable.
Yeah.
To actually consider yourself a voter rather than a moderator. Because I have questions myself.
Yeah.
I am a member of this community as anyone else is, or, a member of the larger Seattle community. And so I think just being true to who I am and just being straight with folks and with the candidates tonight will give the people who are going to make a very important decision, because the council is changing.
Yeah.
We are going to see a real overhaul of the city council like we haven't seen in quite a while. So this is a key election, very important, especially given what the city is facing right now. All of the issues, like you say, they face communities throughout Seattle, but things are different as you go to different pockets. You have the Jackson Park golf course. That's very important to folks here in District 5. Homelessness, encampments, where they pop up, and the dilemma people have with knowing that there is a need out there. Those who are unhoused need help. This issue needs to be addressed. But then you still have people battling with, NIMBY.
Yeah.
So yes, it's important that we learn the issues of concern specifically to District 5 to make sure that the people who are going to make the decision that will ultimately affect all of us in the Seattle area, to make sure everybody out there gets the answers that they're looking for.
My guest again is Angela King. I know you got to get ready to go do a debate, but I'm going to ask you. You don't have to answer.
Yes.
So you've done some research.
Yes, sir.
I know you're a moderator.
Yes.
I'm just trying to get in your Kool-Aid a bit. Did you see something in one of these candidates that you went, I think I like this particular?
Okay, were you going to pull out the journalist in me and that I need to remain
based
objective?
off, yeah, but you know what I mean? You've done some due diligence.
Sure.
They've got 60 seconds to answer these questions. That's going to be tough to do. That's another question I was going to ask you. But have you noticed one candidate or another that you think may be even more prepared to handle this? They're both new.
They are both new, and I think that's why this debate is so important, so people get to understand not only what they think, but how they handle themselves publicly. I think it's the dichotomy, the place that each of these candidates is coming from is so dichotomous.
Yeah.
They're so different. You know. So I am not going to color the jury pool or anything like that, but I am looking forward to digging into some of the big issues of importance to District 5 and letting the folks out there who need to make the decision make it in an unfettered way, just with the facts.
Okay.
So I'm gonna leave my opinion out on certain things.
All right. Well, there's some issues that are at the 30,000 foot level. There's some issues that hit the ground.
Yes.
And they're big issues and they're important issues and they're very nuanced. So they have to be at the 30,000 foot level.
Absolutely.
But when they hit the ground, how effective will they be? That's what I'm hoping that we get answers to, because I'm already hearing, and we've heard in the pitch debates, oh, money. Well, I'll just spend some money and we'll fix this because we'll just spend some. And when we're talking in particular about home figures, that's $1 billion.
Yeah.
So where's this money going to come from?
Exactly.
But anyway.
Well, I will be asking specific questions as to different means to provide funding, as opposed to just say, oh, we need to spend more on this, more on this. There are some options and some ideas that are floating out there that I plan to ask the candidates specifically about when it comes to revenue for the city and affordability, issues of homelessness.
Thank you
so
for
forth.
doing what you are doing.
Thank you for what you
really
do.
Appreciate it. Let's do a shameless shout out right now.
All
How can
right.
folks listen to you? Where can they find
Oh.
you? You know, all the goodies on finding out more about how we can hear more of Angela.
All right. Well, I am on at Dark 30 on KUOW 94.9 Seattle. And that is, of course, FM dial. Let's just say I kicked the rooster in the and I'm up before everybody else. But from 5:30 to 9 a.m. every day, Monday through Friday, KUOW.
Yeah.
I'm also on, your social media platforms as well. Be nice.
Yeah.
I'm all about having discussions, but like I said, don't let the facade fool you. I can get scrappy in there if need be.
And it was a big deal. I remember when you got that position too. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And
It's
are
an
you
honor.
enjoying yourself?
I am. I had to remember how to do some of the stuff you have to do to be in front of people, with a microphone and headphones. I sound professional no matter how I look when I'm behind the mic, but I had to kind of dial it up, and I'm gonna have to fix my quaff now that I got these headphones on. But it is truly an honor. I am humbled to serve again as a proxy for the voters out there who need the information to make what is going to be a crucial decision come November 7th.
All right. Well, congratulations
Tony,
again.
thank you.
Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
And we look forward to the debate at 7 o'clock. Once again, this is Tony B for Rainier Avenue Radio .world. Jake Wittenberg from King 5 is going to be joining us very shortly. That will be the trifecta of moderators that they're going to be the ones asking the questions for this debate, which is going to be coming up very shortly. If this is your only time to get information, what this pre-debate for is to give you some context into who the folks are that are asking these questions, that have hopefully prepared more than you have to get answers. And it's a huge responsibility. And it's something that I know that they don't take lightly. But just like you get to hold the candidates accountable, we hold the moderators accountable. Jake, how you doing, my man?
Tony B, good to be with you. So cool to be with you on the radio after all these
Excellent.
years.
Awesome to be with you. Before we get started about anything, same thing I did with all the other. Before we get talking about the debates, I want to find out some more about you.
All right.
Now let's share with our audience who you are. Where'd you grow up? A little bit about your background.
Yeah, I grew up born in Southern Illinois and spent a lot of my life in Illinois and Iowa. My dad was a newspaper publisher. My mom was a reporter. And so, you hear about military brats. I was a newspaper brat. So we moved around. My dad took over eventually the Helena Independent Record. So we moved to Montana and the Billings Gazette. And so I spent most of my youth, I guess, in Montana. I consider myself a Montanan. And went to Montana State University, became a film school guy, was going to go to Los Angeles and do the movie thing. And I loved working on movie sets, and then took a summer job as a photographer editor at a TV station in Billings, Montana, and just got hooked. And so finally, I think my parents were like, finally, he's going to get a real job. So I got into journalism and had just been hooked ever since. Went from Billings to Columbus, Ohio, and now been at King for 14 years.
Well, I was talking to John. I brought up an interesting point, and I asked him the same question, because you have a journalism background.
Yeah.
Most of these debates, the moderators are journalists.
Yeah.
Now, they could be businessmen, they could be scientists,
Sure.
they could be engineers, they could be social service workers. I'm not saying why that's the case. Why do you think that is the case?
I think journalists just have this innate ability to just have really thoughtful, intellectual dialogue with people. We're trained at asking questions. I think we're really good listeners. What we do is interview people, and so I think this format we have here at North Seattle College is perfect for what we do. We're going to keep this 1 hour dialogue going. I think we're going to challenge the candidates in ways that maybe someone not in the business might not be, you know, trained or I suppose, you know, experienced enough to do. If someone's going to start going off course and start being a politician, we're going to cut them off and put them back on track. And I think that's something that we do day in and day out. So it makes it easier, I suppose, to kind of moderate these that way. But I think to your point, though, I would love to have a bigger panel and get, you know, a small business owner asking questions or a firefighter. I think everybody, this is our community, you know, this is our District 5. And I think this is a chance for everyone to have a voice. And we did take some viewer questions, so we're trying to infuse some of that here too.
Jake, you know, we can't have 10 people on the panel.
It'd be a 3-hour debate. It'd be a long debate.
That's why you choose some folks with the thought, maybe even the hope, that they represent the bigger picture.
Yeah, well put.
How did you prepare for that? Have you done a debate before?
Put. I live in Woodinville, and I don't live in District 5. Sometimes I wish I do. I really love this part of town. So I've done some Woodinville City Council debates before. I've done stuff in my other markets, but this is my first Seattle City Council debate. I'm really looking forward to it.
Okay. Yeah. Why did you decide? Why is it important to you? And I'm assuming that it is.
Yeah.
To do this, to host this position where the folks who are watching and listening right now, their vote may hinge.
It's interesting
on the questions.
Yeah. No, this is really important stuff. We are at an inflection point in the city of Seattle. 7 of 9 city council positions are up for grabs. I don't even know if this has happened in you know, my lifetime. It's a huge change for the city.
4 of them no incumbent.
Yeah, 4 of them a lot of them with no political experience whatsoever, right? And so, which is totally great. But I think to be a part of this change in the city of Seattle, this inflection point that we're at tonight, I think some of these questions tonight, you're going to hear good answers from the candidates about this point in time in Seattle and where we're headed. Because it's a point we could go this way or we could go that way. And so to be a part of that was really important for me. And just politics in general, I think it's important for the civic discussion. It's what brings us all together in a way. And I hope to make that positive. Politics can be so negative sometimes. I think this is a time as a journalist when I want to bring people together to have quality discussions instead of, you know, fighting all the time. I think this is a chance to kind of get folks all on the same page. So being part of politics, I think is important as a journalist. It's important for King 5. It's important for our brand to show how connected we are to our local politicians and candidates and make sure everyone gets a fair shake.
Now, there are a lot of things that the candidates have in common, but there are some things that they don't have.
These are 2 very different candidates tonight.
That they don't have in common. How does this change, or what does it do to your approach when basically the bottom line is you're trying to find out answers to questions? Does that make a difference?
Yeah.
Do you say to yourself, I know how you feel about this issue and you are not giving me the answer?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. To have 2 very different candidates like we're going to see tonight makes it a little easier to draw that contrast out between the 2 of them, which is kind of what makes it fun. You know, get 2 very different. I mean, Cathy Moore came ahead percentage-wise in the vote in the primary, but ObeySumner was very close considering. And so they may have 2 different views, but I think in the general election, they're going to be a much closer 50-50 divide with the local voters here in District 5. So that's going to be interesting to tease that out. I think the audience is going to give us some input right away as to who they support, which is going to make it an interesting environment tonight. But I think giving these candidates a chance to have their voices heard is number 1. Give them the space to have their platform to say what they're all about. And we're going to ask them some questions that I don't think they saw coming. So stay tuned for some drama there.
Okay. If the question is asked, how much flexibility do you have? Or if you don't have the flexibility, how much are you going to take to say, I need a better answer, I need more of an answer? And, you know, again, we have the issues that are out there.
Yeah.
But that follow-up that comes from the 60 seconds can sometimes, you know, be the determinant in really finding out what the deal is. How do you plan to approach this? Are you going to be aggressive? Are you, you know, again, I understand what you're saying. You know, you want to have some, you know, some moderation in this where you're not necessarily. What's going to be your style? What can we expect when you ask the question and then everybody goes, well, that was the answer? What's next?
You want me to give
Jake?
away all this, don't you? You're really going to steal my thunder here.
What's next, Jake?
I think to your point though, which is a really good one. You've got the initial questions, which are of course important to start the discussion, but it's those follow-up questions that are going to help direct the way that this goes tonight. And I think that's where the research comes in. I think based on where some of these candidates sit on the issues, you can kind of get a feel for where they might be going, and we're going to be right there to catch them and challenge them just to make sure that we don't want them to come here and just pontificate about this or that. We want them to get specific with these District 5 voters so that they can tell them what they're going to do about the Lake City Community Center, what's going to happen on Aurora, what's going to happen at Northgate, Ingram High School where that shooting was. What are they going to do specifically for these kinds of things? And that's where the follow-up questions come in.
District 5 is different now. How important is that in this discussion for communities who might say, well, I need to make sure that we get the attention that we need. And then you've got new communities coming into this as well. How important is that? Or is it important?
Oh, it's such a good question. You would know better than me, being such a longtime guy in media here in Seattle. But I see District 5 as a challenged district. It's got a little bit of everything, I feel like, in the city. I think it's growing. I think the Northgate Transit Hub is a huge change for this part of town. And this is an inflection point for that. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, this is a time for Seattle voters to decide, do we want to go this way or do we want to go that way? And this is the time when these two candidates need to speak up and say which direction they're ready to go for. Because I think if you move to District 5, you want the best for you and your family. And I think if everyone comes to District 5 thinking that this is going to be, a difficult place to live for them and their family, they want to know how safe it's going to be for them and their family. And things have changed. And so I'm interested to see what they have to say about growth, to your point, very much. Yeah, man.
You kind of dodged my question, but that's okay.
I wish I knew more about, I do wish I knew more about where District 5 has come from over the last 10, 20 years. I'd like to talk to more District 5 people about that, actually.
Yeah. So before I let you go, and I'm going to give you a chance to have final words here, but I asked each of the moderators, you've done some research, you've done some due diligence, more than most people are going to be able to do. Is there a candidate that you think, out of the candidates here, that is more prepared to be able to handle this position of Seattle City Council District 5?
I'm going to leave that for the voters to decide. I'm going to dodge your last question. I think both of these candidates come from two very different places, and we're going to find out a lot about these District 5 voters here on November 7th.
All right. Well done. I had to ask.
Yeah, man. No, it's okay. Well, after tonight, might have a little bit better idea, but we'll see how this goes.
This is your opportunity to say anything to the District 5 voters out there who will be watching the debate at 7 o'clock tonight, looking to find information on these candidates, if they align with their personal views, with their community views. What would you like to say to District 5, specifically voters?
I would say get involved. Ask questions on our social media platforms. Look for the hashtag SEALEX tonight, SEAELEX, on Twitter or the Instagram or Facebook or whatever you use. Join us on King 5 Mornings every morning. I'm going to put that shameless plug in there, 4:30 to 7. Me and Amy will be there every weekday. We have a great time on the show. We talk politics. We talk serious issues. So we hope that you get the news that you want there. And again, just get involved. It's your civic duty to ask these tough questions and make your neighborhood a better place to live.
We're going to do the shameless plug a little more shamelessly. What's that information again? Because we should have done that.
Yeah, it's okay.
Folks can hear you, see you. What's the 411?
You can find.
People don't even know what 411 is anymore. That's showing my.
It's true.
Anyway.
That's true, man. Don't date yourself, Tony. You can find Jake Wittenberg and Mimi Jung on King 5 Mornings every morning from 5 to 7. We got a great show. Yeah.
Thank you for doing what you're doing. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony. Good to finally talk to you.
Good luck tonight.
Thanks, man.
All right. This is Tony B, and we are still here at the pre-debate show, Seattle City Council debate position number 5 at North Seattle College. I think Black Northwest Coffee is going to be joining me here very shortly. Is that right? Is Black Northwest Coffee going to be coming over here to have a chat with me? We've done debate number 1 in South Seattle. We did South Seattle Community College. Debate number 2 was at the Columbia City Theater. Debate number 3 was at the Broadway Performance Hall. Debate number 4, the University of Washington Hub. Here we are for the final of these series of debates at North Seattle College, not community college, college. And joining me is Erwin Weary. Oh, you want to put those? There you go. You should be able to hear me now.
Oh, I'm official now. This is beautiful.
There we go. How you doing, sir?
Man, I'm blessed. I'm doing all right. I'm doing really good. I'm happy to be here.
Well, this is the pre-debate show, and we've talked to 3 of the moderators so far.
Mm-hmm.
I am no less excited to talk to a Black entrepreneur who opened a business here in North Seattle.
Yeah.
Black Northwest.
Black Coffee
Black
Northwest.
Coffee Northwest.
There you go. Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Black Coffee Northwest, man. It started out of a need. Honestly, it wasn't just something that just happened just by random.
Okay.
It happened because it was the height of COVID, right? So, I mean, opening any kind of food, shop in COVID is weird. But then you put together, like, you open a name like Black Coffee Northwest.
Yeah, that's putting it right out there.
It's putting it right out there. And if you remember back then, you have like social injustice that was happening at a major all-time height for that time area. So we came out and we wanted to make sure that Black and brown people and everyone that have similar minds of connection and communications and trying to build something that matters had a place to go, because it was just a mess. Like we were told, hey, there's a virus out there, you can't go out. And then there was all this brutality that was happening. There was people doing terrible things, and it was just kind of being overlooked. And we wanted to have a place. And so, man, I tell you what, we opened this coffee shop, and I just thought it was going to be a coffee shop. A few people kind of would help out, and it turned into something because we got a lot of resistance. So there was people that weren't happy with the name. Well,
when you say Black, that's what you get.
There you go. And that's what happened. And I tell you,
now, I don't know, I'm gonna let you say, but when you add Black in front of what you're doing, for those of you I think that, that's just gonna make it easier, because the time it's been hard for 450 years and counting. This reason.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I digress. I interrupted you.
No,
that's
okay.
very intentional.
Right.
That you didn't call it Northwest Coffee.
No,
you called it Black Northwest Coffee.
We called it Black Coffee Northwest.
Black Coffee Northwest.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And that's okay. No, it is one of those things where we were very intentional about that name, and we were very proud of that name, because we're very proud people that really want people to understand our culture, our values, and what we stand for. We stand for just justice. We want people to have shots at doing things that matter without all these boundaries and constraints and all these weird systematic things that hold us back. And so we just proceeded to do as such, and then we got met with swastikas, a lot of broken windows. Man, you name it. We baristas were called all kinds of derogatory things. Voicemails was left that were terrible, like really bad stuff I've never even heard before.
Wow.
I'm not a young guy.
Because you chose to call your business Black Coffee Northwest, not because of your political viewpoint or
It was also a place where we connected with everyone, man. We weren't just like one kind of person. We wanted to show love to everyone. We did a lot of community events.
So Black Coffee Northwest is not just for Black people.
Oh no, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. And we had that question so much, and I was just like, how can that be? And a lot of our staff aren't Black. You know what I mean? And yeah, of course we want to cater to our Black people, but at the same time, I want to see everybody win. We have to be part of that winning team, man. And so we have to do this thing together, is what I see. Like, there's no like, well, we're gonna do this our way. You're gonna do. How do we make this all make sense? Yeah, and that's what it's about.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. It's me, Tony B. I am the host of the pre-debate show for the Seattle City Council debate number 5. Joining me is Erwin Weary of Black Coffee Northwest. We started this off, Erwin. I know you sat down. You said, "Man, let's just let it roll politically."
Yeah.
And we addressed some of the issues that impact your decision to name your business the name that you named it. It was obviously intentional. Now I want to, in the little time that we have left, talk about your business.
Absolutely. So what we actually do is, of course, we're a coffee shop. We are a really good coffee shop. We do amazing pastries.
And you don't just make black coffee.
No, we do it all. we now, black coffee is kind of my favorite. I like it kind of plain. I might have a little something in sometimes, but normally I'm doing something simple.
Okay.
But what we really shine is the community engagements. And we have a lot of great community partners. We have a lot of people in the community that support us and we support them. It's about trying to build something way bigger than just coffee. Honestly, coffee is a great vehicle. And, the reason why I thought that coffee would be a great way to introduce community in coffee, because that's where you go to a coffee shop to kind of connect.
Yeah.
And so if you can connect and talk about things that really matter, things that are hard to talk about, it makes it easier. And then when you can see other people that's different than you do things that, I like cars just like him, or I like technology, I like grilling, and you find out that just not only you or just your friend or your neighbor, like that stuff, other people from other places like that stuff too, and you have a connection.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do, is we connect people.
And we're almost out of time here, but I do want to give you an opportunity to say whatever you'd like to say to our audience here. But before I do that, man, I got to talk a little bit about who you are and where you're from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wouldn't mind doing that really quickly.
Absolutely.
Give us some background on where you from.
Man, I am from big old town of Yakima, Washington.
Oh, did you say Yak?
The Yaks. What do they call it? Yakavegas.
Yakavegas.
Yes, sir. And I'll tell you what, it's a small place, but there's some amazing people that come out.
Spent a week in Vegas one night.
Yeah, Yakavegas, man. That's where my mom and dad still live. And I appreciate growing up there, because it really showed me a lot of hustle, a lot of grit and grind. And there's so many great people from that small place, man, that really they helped me be who I am today.
Whatever you'd like to say. They're about to get started here, but I want to give you final words.
We have a company called Grounded, and that's a nonprofit of Black Coffee Northwest that does amazing stuff for youth and amazing stuff in the community. Check it out. Grounded. Black Coffee Northwest. Grounded is what it's called. Yeah.
Erwin, we're going to bring you on to Rainier Avenue Radio and give you more time.
Hey, I appreciate that. Anytime.
Your business out here.
Man, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, the debate is going to start here in just a couple minutes. You can watch that debate right here on Rainier Avenue Radio.world as well, so you don't even have to go away. I'm going to go away right now, and we'll be back in probably less than a minute. I think we might just go straight there. Is that what we're doing, Daniel? Okay, we're going to take a little break, and then we'll be right back, and you'll be able to watch Seattle City Council debate number 5 right here on Rainier Avenue Radio. Big shout out to Converge Media. We'll be back.
Love food? Here are some storage tips to keep it fresh longer. Store cut fruits and vegetables in the fridge. Place in reusable containers. Keep bread in the freezer for longer storage. 40% of food in the U.S. goes uneaten. Save money, save food, save the planet. Visit Seattle Public Utilities for more tips.
Hey Seattle, here are some storage tips to love food, stop waste. Onions make potatoes sprout faster. Keep onions away from potatoes. Ripe bananas give off a gas that makes the fruit around them ripen faster. Store bananas away from other fruits. 40% of food in the U.S. goes uneaten. Save money, save food, save the planet. Visit Seattle Public Utilities for more tips.
This is an important message about coronavirus. With coronavirus still spreading, those who are most likely to get seriously ill must take extra precautions. You are at a higher risk for getting seriously ill if you are over 65 or if you have any serious underlying medical conditions, like heart disease, chronic lung disease, like asthma, diabetes, or if you're undergoing cancer treatment. If you're at a higher risk for getting seriously ill, it's essential you take extra care to protect yourself. Stay home, avoid close contact with others, wash your hands frequently with soap and water for 20 seconds, disinfect frequently touched objects like doorknobs and light switches. The choices you make are critical, and their impact is significant.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects. For more information, visit kingcounty.gov.
We must all remain committed to slow the spread of coronavirus, taking care of ourselves and not putting others in harm's way, especially those already at higher risk of getting seriously ill, including people over 65 or those with underlying medical conditions. If you must be out, avoid crowded areas, stay 6 feet or 2 arm lengths away from others, and wear a face covering. Wash hands frequently with soap and water for 20 seconds, especially after being in public spaces. Avoid touching your face, cough or sneeze in a tissue, then throw it away. Disinfect frequently touched objects. And if you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. Slowing coronavirus means taking care of ourselves while also protecting others. Even if you're not at high risk, these steps should be taken to help slow the spread of coronavirus. We are all in this together.
We are strong. We are resilient.
Our lovely audience has agreed to continue the evening without comment. No booze, no cheers. We'll hold that until the end. But you can join the conversation online. Join us live on whichever social media platform you prefer. We ask that you use the hashtag SEALEX, SEAELEX. Now let's meet our candidates tonight. ChrisTiana ObeySumner and Cathy Moore. You can applaud on this one. Get it all out of your system tonight.
And here is the format for tonight's debate. Each candidate is going to have 90 seconds for an opening statement. Candidates will then have 1 minute to respond to initial questions. Our panel will then lead a follow-up discussion on that topic before moving on. So let's get started here. We flipped a coin before the debate begins. Cathy Moore will have the first opening statement. Cathy.
Great. Thank you very much for having me here this evening. My name is Cathy Moore, and I'm running for Seattle City Council in District 5. I've lived in Seattle most of my life. My mother and I moved here when I was 4. My husband and I have raised 3 children here and also started a small business. I've started my career as a public defender, working in the criminal legal system, the behavioral health system, the child welfare system. I also served as a King County Superior Court judge, where I continued to work in those systems. I also served as the interim Seattle City Clerk, where I managed a budget of $3 million and 30-plus employees, and also reported to all 9 council members and was intimately involved in passing legislation during that. I got into this race because I care very deeply about the city, and I feel that we need to have good governance, we need to have sound leadership, and we need to have a council that's willing to collaborate with our mayor and with one another. Have been endorsed by Mayor Harrell, by Dow Constantine, by the firefighters, a number of entities out there who have all worked with me in the past and know that I am somebody that can get things done and will work cooperatively with them. And I look forward to answering your questions tonight. Thank you.
And ChrisTiana?
I came to Seattle in 2010 when I got a scholarship to Seattle University. This is the 7th state I've lived in, but I've been civically engaged my entire life. I started my career here as a direct social service worker, where I saw that the systems and the policies were what was creating barriers for my clients. As co-chair of Seattle Disabilities Commission, I worked to pass or help pass one of the nation's first bans on sub-minimum wage, which led me to continue that work to Harborview, where I worked at this advent and coordinated entry. And from there, starting my own small business, where we've worked with over 250 businesses, governments, and organizations across the country, where I continue to see that it's policy and structures that is the biggest barrier for progress and change. But I have a track record of success with those 250 businesses, and I believe I can bring that to City Council as well. I would love to come and speak to policies and taking both all of the knowledge of that of the policy process, the policy strategy, and bringing the grounded experience and reality of people here in Seattle, in District 5, of folks who are renters, of folks who are disabled like myself. I have also been endorsed by Senator Noel Frame, Senator Rebecca Saldana, Representative Farivar, Planned Parenthood, the 36 and 46 and county Democrats, and I look forward to talking to you today.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you. And let's get to our first question here. And it's kind of an all-around question about Seattle. We love living in Seattle. There's a lot of great things to love about the city. But right now, there are things to be concerned about as well. We have open-air drug markets. We have home invasions, unaffordable rents for many. So my question to you, is Seattle in crisis? And what would be your first proposal as a city councilor to make the city and District 5 a better place to live? ChrisTiana, we'll go first with you.
To be completely honest, after 2020, our nation is in crisis. Our world is in crisis. I think that there's a lot going on in our district that we actually can address and perhaps even be a model towards how we can perhaps move forward as humans. I mean, in the state where we have climate disaster, where we have an economic crisis, we have so many different sort of things that we need to address. What I think is really important here at Seattle, and is why I'm so passionate about running for office and have been asked to run for office, is that we really do need to make sure that we have policy solutions and investments that's going to get to the tap root of the issue, that's going to have multiple pathways towards shared goals where everyone can come into coalition and community and find that solution, and that we can actually achieve those goals in a way that is going to be sustainable, effective, and be able to perhaps bring a little bit of hope back to our city.
Is there a policy, though, or a proposal that you would want to introduce on day one as a city council member that you think would make the lives of people better?
I would love to start in-house, of course, consultant, right? And so I would love to work with Councilmember Tammy Morales' office to continue working towards making the Race and Social Justice Initiative an ordinance. I also want to make sure that the tree ordinance is paused so we can actually work towards a Green New Deal, and that I'm able to see what's going on with the social housing PDA and what the funding is going to look like for that, because I think that's going to help with a lot of the root causes we have.
Okay, Cathy, the same question to you. Is Seattle in crisis, and what would you do on day one to make it a better place?
Yes, I do think Seattle's in crisis. I think we've been in crisis for a period of time, and I think you see that that's part of the reason that there's such high turnover at the council and so many people that are running. I think the public has been very clear about what the priorities are. They've told us their priorities from day one are public safety, dealing with homelessness, housing affordability, and also climate. So the very first thing that I would do if elected to council is continue to work with our police department to figure out how, in fact, we can recruit more officers. We have the money there, but unfortunately, our recruitment efforts have not been terribly effective. And so I think we need to be reaching out to the SPD and asking them, what can we do to get more officers? Because that's the first step towards moving
towards public safety. The other thing that we need to do is make sure that our third public safety department, the Alternative Civilian Responder Program, is also robust. We don't actually have enough behavioral health workers. We don't have enough social workers. It's a pipeline issue. So also reaching out to them and finding out ways that the city
That's
council can support them.
Another issue that's a big concern for a lot of folks in this room as well. Gun violence in Seattle at an all-time high last year. In fact, homicide numbers are the highest we've seen in 30 years in the city of Seattle. So we want to get into public safety here, and Jake has more on that.
Sure. Thank you, John. You know, a lot of the violent crime we've seen are among juveniles, teenagers in District 5. It was almost 1 year ago at Ingram High School when a 17-year-old boy was murdered by a 14-year-old boy here in the district. State lawmakers have floated the idea of a potential task force to try to get to the bottom of this. Cathy, we'll start with you on this question. Would that be enough? And what would you do to commit to protecting kids and preventing more youth crime?
Yes, I do think we absolutely need to have a state task force. Gun violence is epidemic across our nation, and not just our city, but we also really seeing an uptick in our city. I think the absolute most important thing that we need to do is to invest in the mental health of our youth. A lot of what happened at Ingram was because of people not having sufficient support services, not having sufficient access to mental health. We know that our youth, since the COVID, are absolutely struggling. President Juarez was one of the people to move much more funding forward, but we still don't have enough funding. We also need to be looking at how do we deal with illegal. We need to increase our police staff so that they can get illegal guns off the street. We need to do a better job of keeping track of illegal guns. Also, when I served as a King County Superior Court judge, one of the things I did was enter extreme risk protection orders where we were able to take guns away from people who were in behavioral health crisis.
You're a former prosecutor. A quick follow-up for you. Would you support prosecuting parents in relation to these youth crimes?
Actually, I was a former public defender. So would I support prosecuting parents? I think it would depend on the circumstance. I know we had a parent prosecuted in the past. I tend to think it's better to be proactive and look at ways that we can educate parents. We need to provide gun locks, gun safes. That's something that the council can do. We can work with Every Town for Safety, Gun Alliance, and Moms Demand Action for more education.
And thank you for the correction there. I appreciate that. I misspoke. ChrisTiana, and your thoughts on youth crime and what you would do in day one.
Yeah, one of the things that is really interesting, people may have heard that I've been looking to Camden, New Jersey as a model for how we can both increase community safety and increase alternative community supports. So definitely for community violence intervention programs, I think is really important for a couple of reasons. Number one, what we know, for whatever reason it is, youth are perhaps going to have a different opinion or way that they show up if a police officer comes to them, but they might actually take the treatment or the intervention if it's someone else that seems more like a community member, so to speak. Growing up in Camden County, New Jersey, I also know that youth go into crime and gangs when they have an environment where they are low income, they have economic issues, they have housing instability. And so we really do need to make sure that we're addressing those root causes so that we can have at least that stability for our youth, and maybe that can help.
That you mentioned, it is a potential gang issue, yet partially the gang unit needs more officers. You've been opposed to increasing the number of officers. Wouldn't that have an impact on the ability to prevent youth crime?
Well, the thing about with the Camden, New Jersey model is when they sort of rebuilt the police department from scratch and made them county workers as opposed to a formal police department, which did lead to an increase of officers, and the officers was having a different approach. It was more community policing that would be able to really get to the heart of the issue, as opposed to feeling punitive. It felt more familial. And so I think that, we need to really look at not just sort of how do we address the issue, but the humans at the center of it and what's going to lead to that.
We were talking about earlier the police, the need for more police, and the mayor has proposed 1,400 police officers, and I believe, Cathy, you support that. But ChrisTiana, you do not. Can you explain what you would like to see happen instead of that? And does that make Seattle streets safer by not having as many police officers on the force?
Yeah, I mean, if you read the Police Enforcement Research Foundation's report across from 2016 to 2020, or 2023 now, you'll see that they say that the recruitment issue has been going on for almost a decade now. And a lot of the interventions that we have are not working. I do feel like we need to make sure that our police are available for those priority one calls, and then see if we could take that bandwidth off of them with these alternative services so that we can have a both and.
Cathy?
No, it doesn't make our streets safer. We need more police. You know, yes, our police are stressed. They're having a difficult time, but they've been very clear with us about what they need. And the number one request that we've had from the police is give us more staff. So we're not having to pull detectives off their jobs being detectives. We're not having to take people out of the gun violence prevention unit. So I think we need to listen to the police when they tell us exactly what it is they need.
I'd like to ask a question in regards to public safety before we move on to a new topic, and that includes response times. The north portion of Seattle has some of the longest police response times. District 5, if you have a nonviolent crime, you may not see an officer until tomorrow. ChrisTiana, we'll start with you to pick this up on this topic. What is it you can do to help with response times, given what you said about the police recruiting issue?
Yeah, so what we also have seen in the empirical research right now is that having more police officers but continuing to put additional purview on top of their bandwidth is not going to reduce those response times. So if we need priority one response, let's have that. But some studies have shown here in Seattle that 40 to 60% of calls doesn't have to be responded to for police. So we can alleviate that burden. We can actually perhaps have a more, quicker response.
Cathy.
Again, ChrisTiana and I disagree here. My position is that even if we have the alternative civilian responders, and we absolutely do need to have them, that doesn't create enough bandwidth for our officers to continue to deal with the priority one crimes. That's not going to make that go away. The only thing that's going to help with that is getting more actual police officers who can deal with crime in progress. We can also look at utilizing community service officers as another alternative.
All right, we want to kind of move to a similar topic here, police accountability, and Angela's got more on that.
Despite offering hiring bonuses, and Cathy, this is something you mentioned, the SPD is still dealing with staffing shortages. And you could argue that's because other cities are offering better wages, but some say the Seattle City Council is to blame for the current tension that is causing the potential candidates to look elsewhere for jobs in policing. So, and if you really consider what happened in light of what happened to the previous police department chief, Carmen Best, back in 2020, there was a very fraught relationship between the leadership and the council. So do you agree that the city council is partially responsible for what's going on when it comes to staffing at the SPD? Cathy, I begin with you.
Yes, I do actually agree that the city council is partially responsible for that. I think that during the defund movement, that many people in the police department felt unsupported and decided to move on. And I don't think that we have reached a point where we have come to trust one another, come to see one another as being in partnership. Now, part of that means that we need to do a better job of creating a robust accountability structure, because we cannot really ask the council to change the dial on the dialogue until we know that we are going to have police officers who are professional, and if they are not professional or they're engaged in unconstitutional policing, that they are going to be held accountable and very much aware of that fact. So we need to be able to shift the dialogue, but we need to have some pieces in place before we can do that effectively.
ChrisTiana, same question to you. Certainly, is the Seattle City Council partially to blame for what we're seeing right now when it comes to concerns surrounding the SPD, specifically around staffing?
Yeah, so again, referring to the Police Enforcement Research Foundation's sort of biannual reports, they said that this is actually an issue across the country. Across the country, the bonuses do not work. Across the country, folks have felt slighted, starting with Ferguson, Missouri. Sure, there's definitely some tension going on. There's definitely some fighting, but I do think that what's important is to look at the longitudinal data across the country. But also, I would say the number one thing I've heard from constituents that they're really looking for is a city council who's willing to actually focus on the goals and not get stuck in sort of minutia or fighting that sort of gets folks off that plan. And that's also going to go for police and other departments as well to move towards those shared goals.
So a follow-up question on that front. How would you steer clear of the minutia?
Well, like I said, a social equity consultant, right? And I've had to work 40 hours a week, even through this campaign, as a working class person. It's literally what I do in organizational development, and I've done it successfully. It's what people hire me to do. And so when I go into city council, I'm looking to see if the toolkit of success I've used in other organizations and municipalities would work in Seattle, especially since it's my home. I believe that I'm confident that I can do so.
I'll hand it back over to John.
One of the controversies around police accountability, as you know, is that footage that recently came out, that body camera footage of a Seattle police officer leader, an officers guild leader, laughing and joking in the wake of a fatal officer-involved collision. We had another Seattle police officer under fire, this time for alleged racist comments he made off duty. Now, I've actually got a question from the audience based on that. The two officers involved in that phone call, on that video, were Seattle Police Guild President Mike Solon and Vice President Daniel Otterer. In light of that video, should the city be negotiating the next police contract with them? Cathy, we'll ask you first.
Well, excuse me. I think that's a very difficult question because they are a union. They have the right as a union to choose their leadership. The membership has chosen their leadership. What I think the council does need to look at, though, is that the union president is on the city budget. The city council pays part of the salary of the president. And I do not think that that is appropriate. That's the only union in which the city pays for their salary. So particularly in light of what has happened and the ongoing controversies that we are having, I think that that's a place that we should begin to look.
Okay, ChrisTiana?
I, like most of you, grew up in a society where the police were supposed to be the good guys with the badge. You know, I had DARE in my school when we had that. And when I think about police, I think about people who respect everyone and don't see someone, whatever their age is, to be literally 10% of the area median wage here in Seattle. Any organization, any department, any professional space needs to have accountability. And I believe that if we do not hold police accountable to fulfilling their civic duty of protecting and respecting us, I think that there needs to be recourse for that.
John, I'd ask a follow-up on that if I can. Would you vote for a police contract that does not include additional accountability measures in it?
Absolutely not. I think that whether we had 2020 happen or not, I think what we have here to show, even before 2020, is that there is something going on with the Seattle Police Department in terms of their, whether it's culture, whether it's temperament, whatever that is. I would really love to see if we could work with them to, in the ways that they did in Community, New Jersey, see if they can actually build trust and rapport with the community, but there's gonna have to be some work, and until then, we need to put those measures in place.
Thank you, Cathy. I'd like to ask you the same question. Would you at any point support a new police contract without this measure of accountability in it?
Oh, absolutely not. That is the bottom line. We have to have the accountability provisions in place. In fact, the council in 2017 passed a very robust accountability ordinance. Unfortunately, it was bargained away. Those provisions are now in the SBMA contract. I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be in the patrol contract. Additionally, in answer to your question, the last question, if we don't negotiate with the current leadership, we're not going to get a contract that has accountability provisions in it.
Okay, let's turn to the fentanyl crisis because Seattle's facing a grim reality there, and District 5 is as well. We are on pace for record drug fatalities in the city as well as King County. So Seattle's fire chief actually says treatment options are lacking right now for folks who are addicted. Would you support the city investing in private treatment? And remember, we're facing about a $200 million deficit in the budget coming up in a couple of years. But would you support investing in private treatment for those who can't afford it?
Absolutely. Treatment is critical, and Councilmember Nelson last year, I believe, proposed a pilot program that would have provided basically walk-in treatment for free to individuals, and this current council did not pass it. We have got to get treatment into place. We passed the new drug ordinance, and the key provision of that is that people will be diverted into treatment, and we have to have that treatment in place to make that law effective. There are other types of treatment out there. There's medication-assisted treatment. There are lots of clinics in the city that provide that treatment, but we need to work with people who want to be able to get completely clean and sober. We need to invest in that infrastructure.
ChrisTiana?
You know, as a social service worker, I worked with folks who are literally homeless, who got into permanent supportive housing or other sort of means at the hospital. And, you know, before fentanyl, it was black tar heroin, right? Before that, it was meth. I've had to literally have clients die from trying to Narcan and then not work. Because I spent that time with them, I know that there needs to be treatment, and there needs to be treatment similar to with the children, where folks where they actually will go to. People are afraid of that clinical setting. They, you know, that's why I say we need overdose prevention centers. But if someone's afraid they're going to get set to the 6th floor, they won't go. But they would. But I saw so many people go to Food Not Bombs or People Harm Reduction Alliance and get help. And so, really, at the end of the day, what we need to do is make sure that the people who make these facilities run, the workers, the social workers, the therapists, the outreach workers, that they're funded to scale, because most of those programs are working on a shoestring budget and people are being paid wages that's not sustainable.
But again, we are looking at a budget shortfall in the next couple of years. How would you, this is a question for both of you, how would you pay for this?
Well, if we're looking at it from a crisis perspective, I know that federally, there's, you know, depending on what's going to happen federally, we never know with them, right? There's going to be pots of money, whether it's through, you know, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Foundation, whether it's through even some of the housing bills, if they have intersectional disabilities or chronic illnesses, there's funds for that programmatic and service piece of it. And so there are, you know, the Coalition to End Homelessness said to increase in the housing for emergency housing, the programmatic space so they can hire more people.
Okay, Cathy, how would we pay for this?
Well, that's a good question. So one of the things that we do have are the opioid settlement monies from the state. And I want to say, I'm very proud to say that I actually, the Pharma Purdue case came before me as a judge. I was the one that upheld the decision that allowed for it to go on and become a monumental multi-dollar settlement. So we have state opioid monies. You can also, and we also have federal monies. You know, I think we should look at what King County does. King County has a very small sales tax called the MIDD, and they designate that very small percentage of the sales tax to dealing with mental behavioral health and substance use treatment. I think that that's a route that we should also entertain.
Okay. And speaking of the state, the city of Seattle, as you know, recently reversed a decision not to criminally charge people for possessing drugs or openly using them, basically adopting the statewide law. So is that fair to the people of Seattle and those struggling with drugs? And if not, what would be your solution? Cathy?
Was it fair to pass the law?
Is that law fair to change it to where you can now criminalize drug use and open drug use?
Well, I think the city really had no choice but to codify the state law. I don't think that the city should be in a position of deciding which state laws it's going to enforce and not enforce. I think that's the slippery slope. But I also think that the legislature thought very carefully about that and decided that that does remain an important tool to use in getting people into treatment, and made it very clear that the intent was treatment. So I think it is fair because we're trying to get people well.
Okay, ChrisTiana?
You know, it just feels a lot like the war on drugs, which we know empirically it was unsuccessful. I do feel that that bill could have been written in a different way, where it was providing those alternative services and funding things that we know work instead of this. In addition to that, going back to SPD being sort of overburdened, overloaded, it's asking them to do even more by being the people who are assessing folks on the street. So I feel like it's overloading a system that's already in crisis, and we need to have some transformative and innovative solutions here.
Okay, let's move on to homelessness, because that's an issue that's affecting every major U.S. city, and Seattle is certainly no exception. Angela King has more on that topic.
Yes, and we'll take a look at the numbers in Seattle specifically here in just a minute. But let's talk about an issue that is facing every community, and District 5 is no exception. Communities, specifically like Bitter Lake here in District 5, have dealt with encampments popping up, including one near Broadview, Thompson K through 8, that was cleared a couple of years ago. A lot of controversy surrounding that process and how it was handled. But ChrisTiana, I ask you first, do you approve of the city's use of encampment sweeps? And do you think specific areas should be set aside for encampments?
I believe that we need to increase tiny home villages. If you look at the Countess Inn reports across the years, over 95% with variance across the years have said they would take tiny home villages as shelter, and they would go there immediately. But as someone who's worked in shelters, folks outside are also afraid of shelters too, right? And so no one should be outside, absolutely no one. But the fact of the matter is, when you do the sweep, not only is it traumatic, but it also they just go across the street, because the real bottleneck here is that we don't have the shelters and the housing for folks to go. So if we are working double time in a both and, what can we do innovatively, whether it's with the motel voucher program or other sort of things that we've used in the past, while we're building these tiny home villages and seeing what happens with the social housing PDA, so we can try to just stop the glut and move that blockage forward.
So again, are you against?
I am 100% against encampments. Yes, I don't.
Against encampments or sweeps?
The sweeps. Okay. I don't, encampment sweeps. I mean, at this point, if they need to have folks in a specific area, I would just make sure that it wasn't an area that would be harmful in other ways to the folks who would be living there, because they are also humans too.
Yes. We are all a community. Cathy, question to you. Same question.
So I do support Mayor Harrell's approach. His administration's approach is to do outreach, to offer services, and to offer shelter. And they have worked very well with the Unified Care Team, and they have also, through the Regional Homelessness Authority, contracted with Just Cause, which is the PDA group that also does lead and co-lead, and they very successfully resolved the encampments at Ballard Commons. So I think it is a model that works. But we have to be very clear that it is not humane or safe to have people residing in tents on the sidewalk, in parks and in greenways. And I think that the city needs to be more proactive. So right now, to deal with the issue, you have to file so many find it, fix it, and somebody has to be shot, or there has to be a fire before anything is done. As soon as a tent shows up, as soon as an RV is there, we get a community service officer out there. We get somebody from Just Cause. We get somebody, a social worker, who can deal with the issues and get somebody into shelter and house.
Okay. Cathy, you mentioned the King County Regional Homelessness Authority just now. And according to HUD's annual homelessness assessment in 2022, Seattle-King County was third in the nation for having the highest homelessness rate. We were only behind Los Angeles and New York. King County Regional Homelessness Authority was created in 2021 to help fix what was considered a fragmented system, but the agency has come under fire. It has faced a lot of criticism here of late. The first question to you again, Cathy, what do you think the King County Regional Homelessness Authority has gotten right, and what do you think still needs addressing?
So I think the one thing that they did get right, and I think most people would agree, is that during COVID, they were very efficient at getting COVID monies out to people and make in the form of rental assistance. And they were very effective in helping people stay housed and not become homeless. And that is critically important. It is easier, more important, not more important, it's easier to keep people housed than it is to try to rehouse people. What they have not done right is made a lot of obstacles to getting into shelter and a lot of mismanagement.
Okay, ChrisTiana, the same question. What has the King County Regional Homelessness Authority gotten right and what still needs to be corrected?
I think that the approaches and some of the pilots that they've had has definitely shown a promising success. They've also started an amazing database where they're starting to really see who is in need and how you can connect them with housing that makes sense, which as someone who was in the beginning of the coordinated entry, that's a huge win. But we also have to remember, this homelessness crisis didn't start and last 2 years. KCR, King County Regional Housing Authority, has only been into existence for 2 years. So
You're out of time.
That's time. Thank you.
And that's going to lead us right into our next topic, which is affordable housing. And you both cite affordability as one of your top issues here. So nearly 2/3 of the Seattle area's youngest renters, we're talking about Gen Z, spend at least 30% of their income on rent, according to the latest U.S. Census data. What would you do to make Seattle more affordable? Cathy, let's go to you first.
Well, we definitely need to build more housing. We have a housing supply issue, and we certainly have an affordable housing supply issue. Unfortunately, it's going to take 40 years of pretty constant building to get to the point where we have naturally affordable housing. So we have to look at how do we create affordable housing. I would go back and revisit the mandatory, and where we really need the housing is in the 50 to 80% area median income. That's workforce housing. We need to go back and relook at the mandatory housing affordability ordinance and require that there be more on-site housing put in rather than in lieu funding, because there's a 4 to 5 year lag from the in lieu funding to actual putting housing in place. We need to look at extending rental subsidies through perhaps increasing the jumpstart tax, and looking at tax exemptions and expanding them out to property tax exemptions, expanding them out to 50 years rather than 12 for subsidized rent.
ChrisTiana.
yeah, so to continue with the statistics, right, that the average one-bedroom apartment in the city is about $1,600. You would have to make about $70,000 a year to have the 3 times the income to even qualify for that. And most folks, when they're just coming out of college in their career, is not going to make that amount. Not to mention that the average apartment in the city is like 500 square feet, and it's a studio or 1 bedroom. So what happens if you get married? What happens if you have a family, right? And so that really drives up the price. We really need to, I think the social housing PDA is going to really perhaps help, because that's going to be based on income in a way that otherwise was restricted based on HUD or federal guidelines that makes it lower. But especially if we're talking in the 70,000 range and higher when you have a family, even if you are making area median income, the housing right now is really terrible. And so I think that we need to look at what's going on with the prices and make sure that we are able to have a market that's affordable.
Well, ChrisTiana, you talk about affordability and what it would cost to rent an apartment. Would you lobby the state to legalize rent control? And if that happened, what kind of policies would you put into place?
I would definitely think that we need to do something. So I wouldn't say it will only be rent control or rent stabilization perhaps, but I definitely would say we have to do something. One of the first things that we would do is that, we've been hearing about how the larger property management companies are using sort of this internal service where they might sort of be price gouging and driving up that cost. Really looking into that, because if that is happening, we need to break that, sort of essentially antitrust it, so we can see if that can bring down the rents as well.
All right, Cathy, same question.
Would I lobby for the city?
Yes. Do you support rent control, and would you lobby the state for such a measure?
Oh, no, I do not support rent control. I think it's been shown, if you just look at San Francisco and New York City, where they both have rent control, it has not resolved the issue of skyrocketing rents. I think that what we do need to do, though, is we have put in place some tenant protections that have been very important in terms of giving tenants a long period of notice when rent is going up, in terms of providing relocation assistance. The city needs to do a better job of connecting landlords to tenants in that instance. And we also need to look at working with small landlords.
All right, and that's
Sorry.
All right. Well, when we talk about affordable housing, the question is, where would it go? And we here in District 5, there's always the big question right now about the Jackson Park Golf Course. Should that be turned into a green space, or should that be made available for further housing development? ChrisTiana, I pose the question to you first.
Sure. I think that the biggest conflict I'm hearing about Jackson Park is that it feels inaccessible to people, and that we don't have a lot of land. That's really the biggest scarcity area that we don't have is land, right? And so speaking with Jackson Park for All, that's sort of their idea is like, well, here's this big swath of land that we can't really access. Is it a park? And if so, we should access it. If it's not, what would it look like to be able to have that, perhaps have eco villages or other sorts of green homes?
So you support green space rather than housing development?
You can have both. You could have, you don't have to have one or the other.
Okay. Cathy, I pose the question to you.
Right. So at the moment, housing, and a voter initiative was passed, I believe it's Initiative 42, that prohibits housing being built there. It can only be park. If you use it for a different use, it has to be the equal use. So basically, it's golf. It has to be golf, or it has to be park. So right now, that would require a voter initiative or a lawsuit, and I don't think
And
that
right now, one is on the table that is being proposed.
well, we would have to see what happens, but at the moment, it's illegal at the moment. So housing is not an option at this time.
I do have a follow-up, Christiana. This is one of 3 city-run golf courses that we have, and it also is pretty much packed every day of the week, at least in the spring, summer, and fall, bringing in millions of dollars in revenue. So how do you make up that money if you turn it into green space?
My understanding is, I think that for golf, it's a sport. I know that some of the high schools go and play there. It's not that the entire golf course will go away, but again, we have a crisis for housing that's actually in green spaces, because just because we have affordable housing, folks want to live in green spaces too. They don't always want to live in concrete, right? And so I think it's really important that we actually see how revenue neutral it is, and go from there.
Okay, we want to turn to transit and infrastructure, obviously a big issue in our area as well, and Jake has more on that.
Yeah, and Northgate Station is poised to be one of the busiest transportation hubs and corridors when it's all complete. Cathy, you live near Northgate. Currently, Council District 5 Councilmember Debora Juarez says she's proud of her work to reimagine Northgate with the Kraken Iceplex and the John Lewis Memorial Bridge connecting both sides of I-5. But we've seen at these transit stations a real problem with crime and violence. Cathy, we'll start with you on this question about Northgate. How can you make that area more appealing for everyone, specifically the transit station?
Oh, well, I think that we need to have, keeps coming back to, we need to have more police officers, but I also think that if we had community service officers who that was their particular precinct in which they could be in the neighborhood, we could have community ambassadors that would be there to greet people, talk to people, really just to create a sense that somebody is paying attention. It will be nice when we actually have the development of where the Kraken is. Some of that development opens, and so we are bringing more people to the transit station and to the area. So there's more activity and things to do, which I think help people feel, helps deal with crime and makes people want to be in that space.
ChrisTiana, same question for you about Northgate and the future.
Yeah, so up until last year, I lived pretty much along Rainier Avenue from Licton Springs up to 145th. And the biggest thing that I think is happening with the increase of crime is the crime is not necessarily increasing. That's always been an area where folks were unhoused, or there was always, something sort of going on. And so what may be happening is that sort of that got disrupted, and instead of saying, hey, how can we use this opportunity to provide services, to have the transport, to have new organizations show up at that transit center, we just sort of built it. And so I would love to see, especially a mixed use development in that space, and have housing, have services, have resources, where there's a third place, not just for, for everyone, all of our neighbors to go. And that can not only be a place for folks to be able to get the help that they need and to be able to get off of the street, but also for us all to get to know each other and to build a community again.
Sound Transit and Metro both have budget shortfalls. They're finding it difficult to fully staff what they need when it comes to security. As a city council member, would you be able to implement any change or anything to add to the security measures at the Sound Transit?
Yeah, I think that again, it goes back to the real upstream issue here is the fact that there are so many different industries, so many different areas where folks are underpaid, and they are asking for increases. And they're all the jobs that we really need: social workers, bus drivers, things like that. So what I would do to make sure that we have the security, to have the services, is to make sure that we really are investing in those core root solutions to have wage parity.
All right, let's get into the city budget. We mentioned that there could be as much as a $250 million deficit by 2025. So Angela is going to give you a couple of questions about that.
Yeah, and we could be looking at another $207 million deficit come 2026. So the problem seems to be compiling upon itself. A recent report from the Revenue Stabilization Work Group says Seattle is outpacing tax revenues. So how does the city balance the budget while also maintaining essential services? Or another way to pose that question is, can you give us an example of where the city right now could better manage spending? Cathy, I'm going to start with you on this question.
Better management. Well, I think that we do have a lot of duplicative services. We have a lot of outreach that's being done. We have a lot of different nonprofits that the city is funding through contracts that I think many of them are doing the same job, and it would be nice if we could get them to collaborate and consolidate. But I think that what we really need to do, first thing, the next council, is to have a forensic audit as well as a performance audit, so that we actually know where all the money is being spent, where it is in the departments, and the next council is operating from the same set of facts and the same baseline. And then at that point, we are going to actually be able to answer that question: where are we overspending? Where can we find efficiencies without necessarily having to lay people off, but become more efficient and more lean like King County does?
Can you give us an example where these services or organizations, processes are repetitive?
No, truthfully, I can't. I don't know the details enough. I have a lot of assumptions, and I don't think it's good policy to operate from assumptions. And that's why I think it's important to have the forensic audit done, to be smart and fair about what's being pursued.
All right, ChrisTiana, can you give us an example of where you think the city could better budget its funding?
Sure. So as you know, I always joke and say I'm a wonk, right? And so I just got done reading this some 90-page budget proposal that was put forth by our mayor, and previous ones at that. It's really concerning that around a third of the SPD's budget is in overtime. That goes to show again that they are overworked. And really, if we're sitting here, we've talked this entire time about that we don't have enough housing, we don't have enough services, we have folks on the street. The last thing we need to do is to reduce social services. As a matter of fact, I think that there could be a both and a win-win here if we try to make sure that the police are well, and that they're able to really focus on those priority one calls, and to see if there's any sort of based on the services that perhaps we would transfer that purview to folks already doing that work, see what the average cost of that is, and see if that can help with seed funding, as well as making sure that we pass something like a capital gains tax.
Well, you bring up taxes. It sounds like you would support something like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, something that I think is really important is that we have the most regressive tax system in the city, and I mean, in the state, and the most regressive tax system in the country. And so some of those suggestions from the Revenue Stabilization Task Force, we need to really have a council that's going to go and lobby around the equal taxation clause in our Constitution, because we won't be able to even put a tax brackets like we do for our federal taxes in place with that. And if we don't have progressive taxation, we're always going to be behind on revenue.
Thank you. Kathy, do you support raising taxes or implementing new ones to address the city's current budget crisis?
Right. So again, as I said, I think the very first step is to do a forensic audit as well as a performance audit. I think that it really comes down to three things. We need to look at where we can be more efficient. We need to look at how we can expand our tax base. And then we also need to look at how we can generate additional revenue. Those two other steps happen after we have a very clear picture about where we're at, where the spending is happening. Honestly, I don't think we are necessarily going to get there just by tightening our belt. I do think we are going to have to look at progressive revenues.
Okay, in terms of possible revenue sources, Kathy, and I know you say you're not completely decided on whether new taxes should be introduced or not, but would you support a tax on high earners, a CEO high pay ratio tax?
Yes, I think based on what I know at this point, I would, and it would be easily incorporated into the Jumpstart tax.
How about a tax on vacant property?
Potentially. The concern I have with that is that there are smaller landowners who have kept their property vacant because of unfavorable laws, and we don't necessarily want to have the unintended consequence of hurting small small landowners. Larger vacant properties, absolutely.
All right, I'm going to hand it back over to John.
Okay, and we're actually almost out of time. We've made it. Thanks for discussing these important topics, both of you. We're almost out of time, but before we go, we got our lightning round, our very exciting lightning round to bring to you. So these are just yes or no questions. I see you have the paddles in your hand. One is a green thumbs up, the other is an orange thumbs down, and these are, again, yes or no questions. 2 minutes on the clock, and we go. Angela first.
Would you support a congestion pricing measure to reduce traffic and air pollution?
Do you support redirecting funds from the police budget to social services and community programs?
Would you support a pilot program to implement a universal basic income measure similar to what Tacoma tried?
Debora Juarez admitted she was surprised as some of the aspects of the job when she was elected. Do you think you'll understand the job? And if you could also say yes or no as well.
Oh, yes.
Sorry,
Yes.
we didn't make that clear. So not your fault at all.
Do you think your policies would, for the most part, align with Mayor Harrell?
Do you support rent control in Seattle?
And again, say yes or no.
Yes.
Oh, no.
If we see another surge in COVID cases, are you in favor of lockdowns or mask mandates and/or mask mandates? Yes to both.
Is Seattle coming back?
I think so, yeah.
Speaking of coming back, should the Sonics and the NBA return to Seattle?
Yes. Why are you
Gotta throw the Sonics question in, sorry.
Exactly. Should District 5 get another dog park?
Oh, yeah.
All right, dog lovers there.
Barkley would love it.
Will the Mariners win the World Series by 2030?
Yes.
I hope so.
Very optimistic. All right, the last one. The Golden Retriever is Seattle's most popular dog, but is it the best breed?
I have a Yorkie. I can't say that. So.
It's actually a trick question because all breeds are the best and all dogs are the best.
Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes.
All right, we're going to give you both 60 seconds now for closing statements. And ChrisTiana, let's have you go first.
You know, I decided to run, like I said, because there are so many people who I've worked with that called me up between Gluttonous Eating Holiday and the beginning of the year when the current council member said they weren't going to run, and asked me to. And why? Because I do have that track record of success. I do have the community supports, the people who have endorsed me. I've already worked with them to pass policies. And the toolkit that I've built and bring, I have used in other municipalities across the country. I know and I am confident that I can not only bring that toolkit to bring change, to bring progress, to bring us together, but also hopefully so that we can build a community, not just in District 5, but I've been here for 13 years now, and it's home. And I really want to be able to have a space that has third places, transit, housing, where we all can be in sort of have those multiple pathways towards shared goals. So thank you, and I humbly ask for your.
And Cathy?
Well, thank you all very much for the opportunity to be here tonight. I got into this race because I have lived in Seattle on and off since I was 4 years old. I have raised, with my husband, 3 sons here who all went to Seattle Public Schools. I want them to be proud of the city. I want them to be able to live in the city. I have a deeply personal commitment to this city being the best that it can be, being thriving, healthy, and equitable. I have spent the past 30 years of my life devoted to public service. I have served as a public defender. I have served as chair of the Seattle Human Rights Commission. I served as the interim Seattle City Clerk. And most recently, I served as a King County Superior Court judge. In all of those roles, I dealt with complicated issues. I had to make tough decisions that affected the daily lives of individuals. This is a very complicated job. We need somebody that can hit the ground running, somebody that has a track record of collaborative, established relationships. I think if you look at my endorsements, it's very clear that all of those respected leadership believe that I'm the person to do the job, and I would be honored to have your vote. Thank you very much.
Thanks to both of you. Oh, sorry about that. Thank you, both of you, for joining us tonight. And a reminder to the folks in the audience and the folks at home, democracy doesn't happen without you and your vote.
And speaking of voting, we are now just about 20 some odd days away from November 7th. So there is still time. When you get your ballot, make sure it is postmarked by Tuesday, November the 7th, or make sure it's in a drop box by 8 p.m. that night. And if you're not registered yet or need more information as to how to update your ballot information, not too late. Just go to votewa.gov for more information. Again, thank you to our candidates here tonight. And I think, Jake, it's your time to cue the moment that everyone's been waiting for.
The moment we've all been waiting for. Let's give it up for our 2 candidates this evening, ChrisTiana ObeySumner and Cathy Moore. Thanks to the 2 of you for being here, giving us some insight into where you stand on the issues. And thank you all so much at home for watching and participating in the program here tonight. We want to thank you all, and from North Seattle College, have a good evening.
And we will get through this together. But these are stressful times, and it's important to also practice good self-care. It's normal to feel overwhelmed, anxious, or afraid, but there is hope. Reach out to someone, connect with your friends, stay in touch with your community, and know that you are not alone.
Did you know that there's an updated COVID-19 booster that protects you even more than the original vaccines? Even if you got the first vaccinations, now it's time to get this new updated booster shot. It's especially important for adults 50 and over and people with a compromised immune system. Even though you may not hear about people catching COVID as often, each week in King County, some people even end up in the hospital because of it. So check with your loved ones and make sure they've gotten an updated booster. For more information on where to get a COVID vaccine, including free vaccination resources, visit kingcounty.gov/vaccines. kingcounty.gov/vaccines. Do you have an idea for a community project in your neighborhood? You could be eligible for up to $50,000 in funding through the City of Seattle's Neighborhood Matching Fund. Grants are awarded to grassroots projects that build stronger communities, with an emphasis on projects led by impacting Black, Indigenous, and people of color BIPOC communities. To learn more about the Neighborhood Matching Fund or to see if your project meets the criteria, visit seattle.gov/neighborhoods/NMF.
Generational wealth. Generational wealth. Generational wealth. What is generational wealth? We asked our communities, and this is what they had to say.
Generational wealth is having financial security and not having to worry about it for yourself, your immediate family, and future generations. It's a very elusive idea to me personally because it's not something in my immediate experience, and it's only something that I'm learning about a little bit more in theory and knowing or trying to know if that's like a real possibility for someone like me.
This campaign to create awareness to generational wealth is brought to you by the Department of Neighborhoods Generational Wealth Initiative, the Washington Housing Finance Commission, and Rainier Avenue Radio World. Create your generational wealth for you and the future of your families. Generational wealth. Generational wealth. Generational wealth. What is generational wealth? We asked our communities, and this is what they had to say.
Generational wealth to me is wealth that has been accumulated from their ancestors, but their ancestors are usually the ones that aren't the ones that built it, but built off of POC ancestors, in my own definition, from what I see. Because not many POC people have that type of wealth, as you can see in many people's neighborhoods and communities. It's usually a white person. You can see it in gentrification around us and even in schools nowadays. But generational wealth is basically hard work that isn't really your own hard work.
This campaign to create awareness to generational wealth is brought to you by the Department of Neighborhoods Generational Wealth Initiative, the Washington Housing Finance Commission, and Rainier Avenue Radio World. Generational wealth. You are listening to Rainier Avenue Radio World. It's me, your host, Tony B. That's it. The debate is over. Talking about Seattle City Council position number 5 and also the series of debates that we've had. And this is the last post-debate conversation that we are going to have. Joining me is candidate Cathy Moore. Cathy.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Let's get started by giving folks the opportunity, and I do this with everyone before we get into the conversation. And I can tell you, I'm going to try and get in your Kool-Aid a little bit. You know, we want to find out some information for our listeners.
Sure.
That's the whole purpose of doing this. But share some background information on yourself, where you're from, that you think is just important for to make sure that our folks listening right now have the opportunity to find out more about you and who you are.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity. So I think I mentioned my mother and I moved here when I was 4. I was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We came here so she could go to the University of Washington, and she became an art educator.
Big win this weekend.
Yes, big win this weekend. Yeah, I never think of my mom as a Husky, but she was. So, and sort of lived here on and off. I did go back east, went to high school, college, and law school back there, joined the Peace Corps, went to law school and came back and worked as a public defender and worked as the chair of the Seattle Human Rights Commission and eventually ran for a judge and was very fortunate to be elected. Served as a judge for 5 years in King County, raised 3 boys. My husband is a small business owner.
All right. I think this is a critical election in the city of Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Different politics all across the world
right.
are taking place right now. I'm not choosing that battle,
yes,
but I just think that this is an important election that we are having right now. I'm assuming you do, maybe you don't. If so, tell us from your perspective why this District 5 debate that took place tonight, this position that you would like to be elected for, is important and critical not only for District 5 but our Seattle City Council.
Well, I agree with you. I think this is an incredibly important election. We have we have 4 open seats and probably 5 open seats because I think Councilmember Mosqueda is going to be elected to King County Council. So there is going to be an opportunity for a significant change, perhaps in the tenor and tone of the council and the direction of the council. And that certainly is going to affect District 5. District 5 has always been sort of under the radar a little bit. And District 5 is a very diverse district, both in terms, ethnically, economically, racially, and it's a huge district. And I think that that gets lost a lot in the larger discussion. And so it's very important that the next council member be very mindful of that and be able to bring that that knowledge and agenda to the larger debate about making sure that D5 gets the resources and the respect that it needs.
Which one of these buckets do you think that you closely fall in? Conservative, moderate, centrist, progressive? Do any of those? Do you feel like you belong to one of those categories that you would like to say, yes, I'm this?
I would like to label myself, if I have to do so, as a pragmatic progressive. I really am very much committed to making sure that this is an equitable city. But I do think that we've kind of lost our way in some regards, and we've lost track of how to just govern in a basic way. And so many people are suffering because of that. And so I think it's important that we keep moving forward and making progress on the larger issues, but that we also deliver on the basics of housing, safety, affordability.
Those are the big issues all around the city. We've got 4 races with candidates who are not, there's no incumbent. Do you think that there is room in District 5 for conservative ideas, thoughts, values? I don't know. I mean, Seattle is seen as a very progressive city. All of the candidates I've talked to kind of have been leaning that way. 4 candidates said, we're not doing this again for a number of different reasons, which we don't have time. But just your thoughts. Do you think that there is room for a conservative values and thoughts for District 5 in this particular election?
I don't know if I would call it conservative. This is what I'm finding across the board. It isn't just the wealthier enclaves along the lake and the sound that are concerned about public safety. I am speaking to grocery store workers, bus drivers, retail workers, immigrant families who are working 2 jobs, and they are really very concerned about their basic safety and their ability to live in the city. So to me, addressing those concerns is not a conservative or progressive issue. That's what good government does. In terms of being conservative, I support progressive revenue, and that's certainly not a conservative principle. So, and I actually think that the majority of people in D5 and the city are on board with pursuing additional progressive revenue.
How do you think you did tonight? Do you feel like you had an opportunity to get your message across? Do you feel that the questions gave you the opportunity, because you only get 60 seconds.
Right.
We know that. Do you feel like you had the opportunity to make your case tonight for you to be the candidate, to be elected?
I'm glad it went fast. I think I would like to have had more time, but overall, I feel positive about it.
Okay, more time for what?
Well, more time. The issues are complicated. They required, I think, nuanced answers, and it's hard to get to much nuance in 60 seconds.
Yeah. Well, we have the chance to be a little bit more informal here, and some of the issues that we talked about, again, they're all over Seattle. The top issues that we're discussing. What does it mean for you when the issue of homelessness is brought up? What does that look like in District 5? How do you feel it in District 5? How do you see it in District 5?
We have a lot of homelessness in District 5, and I think that that's also one of the misconceptions is that, in fact, we were not invited to attend the homelessness forum that was sponsored by KNKX because we were told homelessness wasn't as big an issue in District 5. And I have to say, ChrisTiana and I were both very surprised by that characterization. So we see a lot of encampments, particularly around Aurora. We have a lot of encampments in Lake City. We have encampments over we had one by the Safeway. So it's a serious issue in District 5, and people are really struggling.
What is it about homelessness in District 5 that impacts the members of this community? Because there are folks who say, um, that's what leads to drug use. That's what leads to crime. There are folks who say you can't criminalize homelessness. It's a condition that, you can't put folks in jail and expect them, that to make a difference to them. So for you, when talking to the members of this district, what is it about homelessness? Is it affordable housing? Maybe folks don't want to go to homes. How do you see this issue being better addressed for District 5?
So I see homelessness as a monumental failure of the federal government that the local municipalities are now having to try to clean up with very limited resources. We've had 40 years of disinvestment, starting with Reagan, in housing, in funding for affordable housing. So we just don't have enough housing. I mean, I think fundamentally we don't have enough housing. We don't also have enough housing of the right type. We have people who have been chronically homeless who really need to have permanent supportive housing to be able to to function and lead productive lives, and we don't have enough of that. We then have really in Seattle, we need a lot more affordable workforce housing. I think I was talking about that, the 50 to 60% of AMI, and less so market rate housing. I mean, that's going to get built on its own. And then we do need to work with people who are struggling with behavioral health. We got rid of basically we got rid of in-community mental health group homes and places for people to live. And we are seeing a percentage of people who are homeless are struggling with that issue, as well as drug addiction. You can say, did the drug addiction come before or after? Both. Sometimes it's about being, if you're on the street, you want to escape from a very, very scary and violent reality. Sometimes it's the drug addiction that winds up with the individual becoming evicted. So, like I said, I think ultimately it's a housing issue, it's a service issue, and it's something that District 5 needs to. We've got a lot of that issue along Aurora, so we need to expand our shelter capacity. We need to expand our tiny house villages, looking at non-congregate care where people want to be in that space, and then ultimately just build more affordable housing.
Okay, I'm gonna move on for that, but it's an issue in D5.
Absolutely.
It may look different than it does in D2, but for people who are impacted by it, who say I can't go into the store.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm not saying who's right, who's wrong.
Right.
It's an important issue to them.
Yes.
And I know that there's no easy answer to this.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you pay tiny villages? I mean, those are all good things. And where's the money gonna come from? Because everybody says this is what we need to do.
Right.
Where is the money going to come from to be able to say this is what we can do to put people in who are unsheltered into shelter? And again, factoring in, not everybody is trying to be, and you have folks who are on drugs and maybe they should be.
Mm-hmm.
That all costs money.
Yes, it does. And that's always the perennial question, right? Where does the money come from? And unfortunately, we have a regressive tax system in the state. And it would be really nice if our legislature would change that, or if our Washington Supreme Court would make another decision than the last one they made. So, but that again, coming back to the earlier point, that leaves the municipality basically holding the bag. So I do think that we ultimately are going to have to look at progressive revenue. So that would be increasing the jumpstart tax, which is basically taxing Amazon, looking at implementing a capital gains tax in the city, which would start at profits from sale of stocks and bonds over $250,000. So looking at a CEO tax. The money is going to have to come from the entities that have the most money, that money, because of our regressive tax system, both at a state level and nationally, is not being fairly distributed. And so it's up to the city to get some portion and share of that to meet our basic obligations to protect and provide our residents.
There were a number of issues that you and your candidate agree on. There's some issues that y'all don't agree on.
This is true.
At all.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is police.
Yes.
Your thoughts on what the last city council did or did not do to put us in the position that we are now. Maybe the city council didn't have anything to do with it, but we have a recruitment problem. There are folks who want more police officers. There are folks who think that community policing is the way. When we had our District 2 meeting, there was a young woman who said that there was a burglar in her house at 4 o'clock in the morning. She wanted police response.
Mm-hmm.
And now, what are your thoughts? And I think I know what they are. And how do they differ from your opponent? And why do you think this is the way the city needs to go?
Well, because we are not. So let me say, we are not able, with the staff that we have. So let me back up. Regardless of how we got to where we are, I think we can agree that we are understaffed because we are not able to respond to priority one calls within a reasonable response time. And what we're trying to do is get our response times down to be the national standard of 7 to 5 minutes. And we don't have the staff to do that. And the police are saying to us, that's the amount of staff that we need to be able to actually do that part of our job. And so I think we do have to listen to them when they're telling us that what are their staff needs. I mean, in any department, you go to the department head and ask them, what are your staff needs, right? It isn't necessarily, and then you look at whether you can fund that. That said, I also do support having the alternative civilian response, because there are, as ChrisTiana has said, police in some ways operating out of purview. We could do a better job with having behavioral health responders respond to people in behavioral health crisis. We could do a better job of having perhaps community service officers, like I talked about, being able to take reports about vandalism or graffiti or more low-level sort of public nuisance issues. So we need to be doing both. And I don't think that having the alternative, removing that, right now the police aren't even doing the work that we would have the alternative civilian responders do. So having them is not going to lessen the load or the need for additional police to respond to the violent crime. I see them as working, they complement one another to provide a broader public safety approach and picture.
Sounds good.
Right.
How do you accomplish that balance? How do you make that happen? But my question about this is just going to be more police officers, because it won't just be more police officers in District 5. What do you say to people who historically do not trust police officers, who historically have found themselves on the wrong end of being arrested by police in cases that we can document and that had to do with the color of their skin, and make a strong case for the instability that this causes within the family. People get arrested. It affects your job. It's because we have police who do not understand the issues and the concerns of the community. What do you say to those folks when you say we need more police?
I say absolutely. That is, you're absolutely right. That is your experience, and that's valid experience, and we need to work with that. So, there are two things, number of things. One is there's the Before the Badge program, which was an innovation, and I think it's a really good program where officers before they become sworn have to meet with members of the community, and they actually have to listen to what the community members' experience has been of policing, and hear how they want to be policed. We also have a thing called the micro community policing plans, and that is where each neighborhood creates the plan for how they want to interact and work with police and be policed, and those are through the advisory councils. And so I'm not sure that all neighborhoods are aware that that's an option, but that's very much public input, just saying this is how we want to be policed, and we're going to work in partnership with the police. So I think and we do need to expand community policing. I would like to have police officers live in the community so that they have those kinds of connections. At the same time, we do have to have a robust accountability structure. We have to set it up so that it isn't easy. The disciplinary decisions are not easily overturned, that we continue to have subpoena power for the oversight agencies, that we're able to reopen investigations when new evidence comes to light, and that we have more civilians that are engaged in investigating. And the other thing I would say is that in 2022, the monitor for the consent decree put out a list of recommendations to address the ongoing issue of racial disproportionality in policing. And I think the next council needs to adopt every single one of those recommendations. I can't tell you what they are in the weeds right now, but they relate to basically involving the community and having to report to the community about what the data is and the stats are showing, and being accountable at a very basic level.
I thank you for joining me here. I did hone in on a couple of things that I heard during the debate that I thought were important to hyper focus on. Again, there were more issues. So I just want you quickly to make the point to our D5 audience.
Oh, I there's a camera there.
The specifics between you and your candidate that make you the person that will be the best person for a redistricted D5.
Sure. Okay. Again, I think that we each bring strengths to the job.
You both bring strengths, but you have some differences.
Absolutely.
So what I want you to do right now is hyper focus, make your points clear on those differences. Maybe you did or didn't do that during debate, but now is an opportunity to say, this is where I stand, this is where my opponents stand. If you align with what I'm thinking, vote for me.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think that when you look at the surveys that are being done of the community, the broader community in District 5 in particular, that I align more with the concerns of the community, and my proposals about how to move forward are more in alignment with what people in our community are saying. Additionally, I do have 30 plus years of being in public service. I come with a deep skill set that is going to be necessary to do the job, both in terms of understanding the law. Legislators make the law. It's important to understand how the law works. I come with a lot of institutional relationships that would allow me to get things done, because you need to know where to pull the levers. And I've also worked in a lot of collaborative relationships as an attorney, as a judge, as a community volunteer, and have been able to move the ball forward in terms of social justice, and to some extent racial justice when I served on the bench. So those are all things I'm deeply committed to because they are important issues in D5 and also for us as a city. And I just I'm deeply committed to making this a city that works for everyone.
And my last question to you before I give you the opportunity to say final words to our audience. Does experience make a difference? Does it make a difference?
Yes, I think experience makes a very big difference. And every job that I have started, I've done a much better job after I've been on that job for a while and I've had some experience and I know what the job entails, what works and what doesn't. All my experience has been that once I've had experience, I've been more effective and done a better job. So yes, I think experience matters.
Well, I said before, and I think everyone agrees, this is a critical election. No incumbents running.
Right.
And so new thoughts, new ideas. Maybe that's a big experience to you, though, is something that you say, this is necessary for the time that we're in right now.
Yes, I think it is necessary. It's important to have vision. It's important to want to be creative and innovative, but we also got to get our house in order and put one foot in front of the other. And experience, I think, is important to being able to do that.
Thank you for joining me, Cathy. I'd like you to say something right now to the D5 audience out there. Whatever it is that you want to say to our audience that's listening right now, the floor is yours.
Well, I guess I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. I would be honored to earn your support, and I can commit to you that I will always be available, transparent, and be your ally in this movement forward.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
How do you think you did tonight? Do you think you won? I mean, I'm just asking. You don't have to. Do you think you won tonight? You were in there in the ring. Do you think you won? Do you think you? Yeah. You think you won?
I think I was able to present a good picture of who I am. Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
All right. You guys all do a good job of not answering that. But I know you feel that way, so I'm just asking.
Yeah, I appreciate
Okay.
that.
Well done tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
This is Tony B, and I believe that we are going to have the next candidate joining us as well, ChrisTiana ObeySumner. Again, this is the Seattle D5 debate, and this is the last of the series of debates that we're doing in partnership with City Hall. ChrisTiana, is she joining us? You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio. It's me, Tony B. I'm your host. This is the post-debate show, the last one that we're going to doing. Both of our candidates did a wonderful job. And just let me make this clear. For those of you who saw me in the camera shot, I closed my eyes and listened. That's how I listen better. That's all that was. All right. ChrisTiana, how are you?
I'm doing good. Can't complain. This I think was like the last big sort of like debate. I mean, there's going to be some forums and things like that, but this was definitely the one I was looking for. My family helped me to get this 3-piece suit, so I can look, I can be ready. I feel really confident. We had a lot of really folks come up to us afterward. We had good feedback. So yeah, we're gonna see what happens.
Well, ChrisTiana, I'm familiar with you. I'm just saying that because it is what it is. I don't necessarily, we don't discuss the politics of District 5.
Yeah.
But good to see you again, and
Thank
congratulations on running. What made you decide to run?
Well, as you know, I have been out here, this trying to get to social equity, like trying to fight for structural and systemic change. And I think that's one of the things that folks who were surprised that I made it through the primary didn't understand, that I was already known in the community before I ran for office. I ran for office because whether it was doing the commission work and being co-chair of the Disabilities Renters Commission, whether it was working in direct social service, whether it was being a campus leader at Seattle U, whether it was, out here being community organizer and going to these rallies and marches, or whether it was starting my own social equity and policy advocacy consulting firm and working with over 250 businesses and organizations and municipalities across the country, what I continued to see was that policy and governance is always the top reason why equity and progress has barriers and bottlenecks. And I just got
Say that one more again, just to make sure we heard that correctly.
governance and policy tends to be the number one reason why progress and equity faces bottlenecks and barriers.
Okay.
And so I've tried, I've tried it from this way and this way and this way and this way. And I was sort of hesitant around running for office because, I'm policy wonk, I'm the nerd. So I really just wanted to I just really wanted to try to help, but between gluttonous eating holiday and the end of the year, when Councilmember Ward said they weren't going to run, I had at least 24 people call me and they were like, "So, you hear they're not going to run?" And folks have been trying to get me to run every 2 years since I ran for the transparency seat in 2017. So I guess this year it's like, and so here I am, and it's been great to be able to bring all of the passion, all of the wisdom and the toolkit I've built since 2017, all of the narratives and the stories and the space that I've held with our community. And, just really because of that work, working with different departments and agencies from the city, the county, and the state, I have been in their policy handbooks. I have seen their grant initiatives. I have, the organizational development assessment with their staff. So I think that's also something that people are not getting is that this is not theoretical for me. It's not theoretical for me in terms of the knowledge of how to make policy and governance more equitable, which is actually my MPA thesis. But it's not theoretical as a person in these intersections, in the fact that we need policy that's going to truly hold the actual reality of what it means to live in the city. And if we don't have folks who are, I told someone I'm sort of around the way gal, I have to work 40 hours a week during this campaign. I'm a renter. We still got to go, to the Winco to make sure that we have our groceries. I'm a caregiver to my mom. There are those experiences that it's not that I should be elected because of that, and all the other ones that are out there. But if we don't have someone who has that lived experience and knows, if you pass this policy, this is how it's going to have an impact because this is what people are really looking for or need right now, and this ain't it. That's what I believe that we need in this city, as well as someone whose job it is to keep folks focused on progress and change in the goals and not get hung up by the minutia of fighting or trying to one up or make someone else look bad. We got a job to do. So
D5 is your district.
Yeah.
And yes, all of Seattle is important.
Yes.
But the folks in D5 have their own particular nuances.
Yes.
How familiar are you with the redistricting
Very.
of D5 and the impact that we'll have now? Folks want their issues taken care of in the community that they live in.
Right.
Tell me about the redistricting and how that changes, or does it change in D5 in this community, that these folks are saying we need somebody who understands our particular nuances, and those lines have changed and we have new communities. You tell me.
Yeah. So the funny thing about the redistricting and how much I knew it, I've lived along Aurora Avenue the whole time I've been here since 2010. Everywhere from Licton Springs around 90th in Aurora to 145th in Aurora, as far north as you can get without being still in the city. We just moved to Greenwood because we're trying to expand our family. We got a rental home, which is only really affordable because it's sinking into a ravine in the backyard, but I digress. And we had moved out of the district, and like I said, people kept asking me to run. So one of the things that I said when we moved is oh well, I guess I'm never going to be able to run for city council for D5. And then they redistricted, and now I'm 5 blocks into District 5, which I feel like that's another reason. But The biggest thing about District 5, whether it's redistricting or not, I think that when people think about District 5, they think about it in terms of like wealthy white homeowners, right?
Yep.
And that's because they're the loudest, but it's not because there's more of them. Because there's, what the story I try to like bring this home to. One of my first jobs was Walgreens. There's a couple of Walgreens on
Is it
145th.
not home to wealthy white folks?
No, let me tell you this. Like when I say there's Walgreens on 145th, there's a Walgreens at Northgate. There is a very robust ethnic hair care or black hair care section there.
And shouldn't their needs be important too?
Right, exactly. So like you're not gonna stock product, you're not gonna move. So that is really the example, right? Is that there, especially with more DESC housing, Seattle Housing Authority, there's more folks who are immigrant, there's more folks who are people of low majority, more folks who are disabled, more folks who are renters, more folks who are students, and especially more folks who are aging, which is the growing population of folks who are unhoused. We
Is
need
that
to have,
also enhanced by redistricting?
I feel that I honestly feel like the redistricting, if anything, is going to bring more diversity. And I think that it
That
might.
could make some folks uncomfortable.
Well, I mean, change doesn't happen when you're comfortable. I mean,
Maybe they don't want change. I guess that's what I'm saying at the end of the
well,
day. How do you balance that? And again, one of the things about, I guess, running for office for the first time, being new, being innovative, is that a challenge for you?
no. I mean, like my entire job has been trying to help folks to literally, like, the number one approach and framework that we're asked to do is change management and leadership. My background is in social psych, right? Change is hard. Even positive change is hard. That's why folks win the lottery and their life explodes, right? If we can't say on one side of our mouth that we want to have progress, we want to have something innovative that we haven't done before, we want to see things improve, and then say, but we want everything to stay the same. There is approaches and ways to hold the community, and those multiple pathways towards shared goals is so that folks can sort of have their lane, that they can still move forward without having to walk in lockstep with each other. But at the end of the day, if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep getting what we're getting. And there are so many examples, even if we just want to see things that are already in place or already empirical, that we can try here in Seattle, but we can't keep doing the same thing. So I know change is hard. I know there's change resistance. That's literally my job. But the point of the matter is, if we actually want to see these policies and these improvements and our investments go to taproot solutions that's going to actually have, upstream impacts for downstream collective, effective, and sustainable results, right? We're going to have to do something innovative. And that's what I've been doing nonstop for the last 5+ years. So I would love to bring it to city council.
Some of the issues, most of them are the big issues at the 30,000 foot level that are affecting all of Seattle.
Yeah.
Within each district, those are nuanced. I asked candidate Moore the same question. Example, homelessness. In D5, how do you see homelessness? How do you feel homelessness? It's probably different than it is in D2. It's different than it is in D1. But as an issue, describe to me what it means. Now, there's a lot of ways you can go at this, because there's crime, they say drug homelessness in D5. What does that look like, feel like? What is it?
One of the biggest things that I feel
And everybody don't want a home.
I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
One of the biggest things that I have seen that seems a little bit unique to this area, honestly, with other folks I've worked with, is that there is a lot of knowledge and understanding about what equity is and what equity is supposed to be and like what we're supposed to do to reach the equitable goal, but we don't see the action, at least not the actual transformative action. I feel that in District 5. Oh, the sweeps are bad, but we don't want folks to be outside. We also don't want them to be coming over here. What about our children? Or like, where is it going to go? All of these different sorts of either ors, right? And it's really frustrating. If and I did this when I decided to run. If you go from one coast of District 5 along 85th, as my husband called them, there's a whole bunch of estates. right? These big houses, lots of land. And then you come into 15th Avenue Northwest, and then you start to see more, maybe single family houses, apartments. And then you go into Greenwood, and you see sort of the bars and you sort of that sort of space and more apartments. You go to Aurora Avenue, you're not seeing as many apartments. You're seeing like the ESC buildings, shelters, motels. Then go over to Northgate. Before Northgate was under resourced, it had a lot of the students at North Seattle College there, had a lot of unhoused folks there who would go to the mall to be able to use the bathroom or to be able to, eat food. And now that has gone. And then you continue on to Lake City, which is the most diverse area in our district. And they're going through issues of land banking. They're going through, they lost their community center that did provide a lot of supports and services to everyone. And they're getting a new DESC building, which is interesting. But even in that space, folks are concerned about like, what's this going to do with the crime? And, interestingly, what's this going to do to the infrastructure? We have all these flooded areas. Like, are we going to be able to have the sewer system to have more density? But what I don't hear there, at least I don't hear, is like, absolutely the heck not. We don't want to help folks. At the end of the day, I still hear folks say like, no one should be outside, and I agree. It's just, that change management, right? Of sort of like, okay, well then, if you're not down with this approach, we still want to do it. But what about this approach? Would you be willing to build coalition around this? If you don't want to, if you don't want to have encampments outside, what about a tiny home village? We went to the tiny home village, that was the eco village, and it was beautiful. Like they had solar panels, and they had a rain garden and food. And, the Countess Interport said over 95% of the people outside right now would take that in a heartbeat. So why don't we have more of that? So,
I don't want to keep you too long.
oh, as
And
you
I
can see, I can talk
and
the
I
whole time.
appreciate you being here. Candidate Moore and yourself have some areas where you align. You have some areas where you are different. One of them is police.
Yeah.
Candidate Moore wants more police. Your position on this is?
So, when I talk about the Camden, New Jersey thing, everyone's like, oh, they have more cops. Here's the thing about the cops, right? Let's just start with the saying, you know what? Cops go to priority one calls. That means like there is something actively happening right now, like there's like a gun, armed burglary, right? Priority one calls. But when you look at some of the reports that were done here in Seattle, they said 40 to 60% of those 911 calls don't require SPD to come. And one of the funny things is that ever since 2020, I listened to the police scanner to go to sleep. I hear what these calls are. It really is around 40 to 60%. There's someone that's down the street and they're screaming. A lot of getting stuck in elevators. There's things that if we had alternative community services, I think a couple things are going to happen. First of all, both SPD and the community said that there are certain things that they just don't want to show up to. We're in agreement there. So all of those areas, especially the priority 3 and 4 calls, we should just take that out of the purview. Community don't want them there. SPD don't want to go there. Let's just not have them go there. Then in those priority 2, those folks like, oh, it could pop off, but it hasn't yet. Those are the ones where we can start to look at those community alternatives in a deeper way. Is that going to be co-responder? And if so, that's where I say, well, what the reason why Camden, New Jersey dissolved and rebuilt their police force was because of the police union. And when they rehired them as municipal workers, they didn't have that union. And they were able to not only balance the budget, but also put accountability measures in place. And to, in those cases, have a community policing model where, they were more focused on trying to build rapport with the community as opposed to trying to do what they're doing. And so I think SPD has shown us that over time, even before 2020, that there is a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of their culture, the way that they show up. Let's call it customer service. That we cannot wait for that, nor should we stay on a pause so that they can, during their bargaining. We have organizations, we have services that are already doing this work and they're on a shoestring budget. Several of these places I talk to, and they're only being funded to like 5 or 10% scale. What would it look like to be able to fund those services? And I last thing I say is I've been fair. I say, look, you take the purview that we would reallocate to the other services and organizations, right? You see what the average cost of that service is, what SPD would respond to that service. And then you take the sum, we could do the sum, we could do the average, whatever that is, of that amount. And then that would be the amount we would transfer to budget. So
This is what I'm saying. Violent crime is increasing.
mhm.
If violent crime is increasing, does that not require what does that require for folks who are victims, who are saying, I want the police, I want this to stop, I want to feel safe in my city, and I feel more safe in my city if we have more police officers. And I'm just getting in your Kool-Aid a little
No,
bit.
I understand.
I feel more safe if we have more police officers in our city who are trained to deal with violent crime. And like the young woman who told me at a District 2 meeting, 4 o'clock in the morning, there was a burglar in my house. I need police.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what? We also have 7-minute response times. And the reason why is because they're going into all of these other calls. So wouldn't we want to, first of all, have proactive and preemptive solutions? Number two, have solutions and interventions that people are actually going to seek and that already has a track record of success, as opposed to having those barriers because of community trauma. Number three, being able to have a police force that doesn't have such a high purview, so they actually can get to that person with the burglar in their house at 3 o'clock in the morning, because that's what they're focused on. They can be able to put folks back into investigations and proactive policing, because they won't have everyone out on patrol, because we keep giving them more and more of the stuff. The community won't have the police coming up in their business when they don't want them to. And maybe we would have more community safety, right? And so I think, like, actually looking at, even with folks who might have increase in violent crime, but why though? Because we're also not talking about the economy, housing.
It's a
We're not
lot.
talking about the trauma. Like, we just went through a whole pandemic where 1 million people died, and we just kept on trucking like it was okay, right? People are losing their jobs. People are getting disabled. They have a climate disaster. We have one of the highest rental markets in the country. We have one of the highest income disparities in the country. The top 20% makes 22 times more than the bottom 20%. So
I
all
certainly
of
don't want
that,
to make it seem like this isn't nuanced and these things
right?
that happen
And
at
that's
30,000 feet.
yeah,
I'm just talking about the people who are saying crime
right,
is happening and it's happening to me.
right.
And yeah, we don't have a whole lot. And I thank you for
Sorry.
staying here.
As you can
There,
see, yeah.
there are some differences between you and your opponent. I gave your opponent the opportunity to say, these are the differences that I think are relevant, and this is why you should vote for me. I'm going to give you the same opportunity to say to our D5 audience, we align in some things. Here are some differences. This is where I stand. This is how I'm going to move forward. This is how I would like our community forward. This is how I will represent.
Okay. A lot of folks look at me and they wonder, well, what exactly is it that I'm going to bring, right? Because there are certain things I welcome to the room before I do. But as you hopefully heard, and as I said in the beginning, this is something that I've been doing even before I came to Seattle. This is work that I have been doing intensely and directly, and not just in equity, but all of the different places I've been in and worked with. I I want to just acknowledge the resume, and I think also making sure that we are holding and tracking how we um how we consider the accomplishments of people when there are different ways that they show up in the room. And at the same time, the reason why my track record has been so successful, the reason why I've been able to support so many people with policy change, social change, transformative justice, is because I take the policies and I weave in the wisdom of lived experience and truly amplifying the voices and leadership of those most intersectionally impacted, which is shifts. Because if we put policies in place, like for example, they're over here like, okay, well, we're going to put this public drug use law in place, and then they'll put them in jails, and then we'll be able to get them help. King County Jail has one of the highest suicide rates in the country. It doesn't have the services that will actually lead to, if anything, it's going to lead to recidivism.
Are these differences between you and your opponent?
Yeah, because the actual lived experience here for me is not only being a direct social service worker, but also coming from a family of street economy. I know what happens when you put someone in jail because you think they're going to get help. So if you try to pass policies and you only have a theoretical perspective, you're never actually getting to the taproot. It's like a blackberry bush that you only cut at the base, and you don't actually get underneath of it. And so that is where I believe that we differ, because in District 5, as we said in the beginning, it's diversifying. We have renters, we have people of low majority, we have disabled folks, all these different sort of things. I've shared space with these people. I have worked with these people. We have had successes together. We have made progress. This would just be a next natural step. It is a next natural step of the work I've already been doing here for the last 13 years. And I truly believe that the multivariate and multidimensional experiences, policies, the innovation, the willingness to fail forward and get into some good trouble and truly make sure that governance and policy and investment are going to community and not theater, I would say is the biggest difference.
I asked your opponent the same thing. Do you think you won the debate tonight? Do you think that you showed District 5? How did you feel about your performance on stage?
I just came with my real self. I truly do. I think we all sort of want to puff ourselves up and say that we won. I think at the end of the day, my hope is not that I sort of showed off and I was able to win. My hope is that folks heard my policy proposal and they're like, I want that. Because if folks just elected me because they like my nails or vibes, I wouldn't really feel happy with that. But if I won the debate tonight because these folks who came up to me afterwards said, what you said was really great. I'm so happy that there's someone who has this experience. I hope that we are able to actually get this done that you're saying. That's what I want folks to do. And I want that to be for anyone. If I want folks to actually look at not just the work, the stuff I put out during the campaign, but the work I've done, because there's a lot of articles and trainings and speeches I've done that's recorded on the internet. Check my receipts. Look at my policy proposals.
But
if it resonates with you, please vote. If
I'm
don't,
trying to
then
give
don't.
you as much time as you can. They've already cut the lights on, but I want to give you the opportunity to talk. So finally, what would you like to say to our D5 folks who are listening right now? The floor is yours to say whatever it is that you'd like to say to the audience.
I mean, essentially would be that last bit. I mean, please do your research on me. And, if what you see and the track record you see and the policy proposals I'm putting out is something that resonates with you, I would humbly appreciate your vote, honestly, and to build coalition with you and to be able to really have representation here in District 5. But if it doesn't resonate with you and you have a question, please reach out to me. You can reach out to the campaign. You can reach out to me on social media. I'm more than happy to answer that. If you're just like, no, that's cool too. What I really want to make sure that we do is, number one, have a true democratic process that is really based on who's going to be the best and bring the best policy proposals to this district. But also that whoever is elected is actually going to amplify the voices and leadership of those most impacted and actually bring that change and have that track record of change. And so that's what I would say to District 5 folks. Reach out to me if you have questions, but if it resonates with you and it vibes with you, please vote.
Well, you've heard from both candidates. If you don't know, now you know. I will say this. I think that you are authentically yourself. And that's what I saw tonight. So folks will make a decision. Obviously, you want to win.
Yes.
That's why you're running.
Yeah.
So it is
I
important.
definitely want to win, yes. But I mean, I want. Well, really, it's not about winning. It's about doing the policy work. I just want to. I just taste the policy work so bad. So I'm getting through the political process to get to that.
Well, ChrisTiana, good luck to you. I'm sorry I I was traffic cop. I kind of interrupted you a few
Oh
times.
no, you're
Just
fine.
wanted to get to some point. But at the same time, this is an opportunity to let you talk, and I wanted you to be able to feel free to share, and in less in not just in 60 seconds.
I
So I appreciate you taking the time to share what you thought. We went a little bit over time.
Yeah.
Well, we did.
Okay.
Good luck to you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for joining us on Rainier Avenue Radio. You know how we are. You know how we get in.
Yes. Thank you so much. This is great.
Uh, this is Tony. Do I have time to talk to Jill? Jillian? I know we're over time, but I want to, if we don't do it, it won't happen. Thank you for joining me. Oh, that's right. So Jillian Rafferty is the executive producer of all of these debates that we've had, aside from the District 2 debate that we've had. How are you feeling now? Like right now?
Really energized. I'm feeling really energized and grateful that all of these candidates showed up. I feel like I learned a lot, and I'm really inspired by these people who have so many ideas for improving our city, and who put themselves out there. It's really not easy for all these candidates, and it's not easy for the panelists to be asking them questions. I was just reflecting, 1 hour of this production takes like 100 man hours to put together. And so for all these people who care so much to come together and put this together, it's really a sign. If we say Seattle's in crisis, we've got a lot of people working on it.
And you're trying to reach people in a year when people aren't really trying to be reached. I'm just saying. Let's talk about how you managed to do that, what the thoughts were in putting this together. I'm going all the way back to the beginning, back to the process of how are we going to present four debates in 4 different districts, and at the same time make sure that each district, because I'm not putting words in your mouth, I'm sure that it was important to you that in doing these debates, the folks who watched and listened garnered information that will be important to them to make an informed vote.
Yeah, well, and having the debates in the district, our executive director, Alicia, who you spoke with, she was very insistent, and I thought that was a big part of it. And so would you want to know about the questions or putting it together? What
It
else?
could be the questions. It could be the how did you find time to sleep? It could be getting, herding the cats to get these candidates to agree to do this. It could be pulling together and working with the various partnerships. It could be all of that stuff to make this happen.
So I guess maybe what people might be interested about is how we put together the format for exactly what we're going to do. And the format's pretty important because the candidates need to know what to expect, and so do the people behind the camera. And you can do it a lot of different ways. We chose the format with an opening and a closing statement, and 1-minute questions, 30-second follow-ups. We did that very intentionally because we thought we want to set the table for people who may not know these candidates, who may be hearing from them for the first time, and we want to have time for them to really expand on it, but at the same time keep it moving and keep people interested. That's why we had, 60 seconds max for people to go on any topic, and then 30 seconds for a follow-up. And it sounds really mundane, but picking that framework really determines whether you're going to have a really engaged debate or not.
Yeah. Now that you've had a chance to do this entire thing, what are the successes that you are happy about? And I know you have to review. But what are you feeling good about right now?
I'm feeling really good about, I've really appreciated how much work the panelists have done. I worked with them to create the questions that they asked. Some of their questions.
Now, panelists deserve a round of
Yeah,
applause.
they do. Their job is really hard.
That is hard to do.
Yeah, because they're doing all this prep in the middle of also working really hard on TV and radio and in some cases print. Some of the panelists we had never been on camera before.
Right.
That was a big deal. Like how do you get up in front of the lights when you've never been on camera before?
And then I'm asking them, so how are you going to ask your question?
Yeah.
You know?
No, but it's fair. I love that you asked that because sometimes what the big complaint I've heard as a journalist is, why aren't you asking the right questions? Why aren't you getting really specific? Like, are you even asking questions that matter to this community? And all of these panelists did a lot of research. Some of them lived in the districts, some of them didn't, but they honed in on what's really the important part. They read news reports. Some of them even drove through the districts to really get a feel for what was going to be important. And we tried to incorporate as many audience questions as possible. I don't know if you heard that. We didn't get to as many as I wanted to. It's really a balancing act and trying to get really specific. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but Angela King had all the numbers today.
Yes, she is.
The queen of numbers. So there's no getting away from her. You're going to have to answer that question or you look pretty silly.
Yeah. Well, it's not over. It's over, but it's not over, Jillian. As far as Rainier Avenue Radio is concerned, for us, we're just getting started. We're going to be taking every debate, every pre-debate, every post-debate. We're going to be airing those again as we move closer to the election day. We're going to be creating vignettes. I understand you guys are as well. So if you missed any of this, or if you need to hear it in a time frame that works for you, we still got 2 weeks to share this content that we have. So awesome job.
Thank you. You too.
Of getting this content together so that if you missed it, you'll still be able to go back and see and make an informed decision. I'm going to let you say a couple other things, but I also want you to know, I also want you to talk about the importance of voting, which is why we did this.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I would want to leave people with is this city is for everyone. And, like any right, you have to practice it. If you think that you can't get involved, you can. The only reason that people are in power is because they said, I want to get involved. This is my issue. Your issue can be super small, but it matters. Any level of involvement you have matters so much. Writing an email, writing a phone call. Heck, the city, the county, the state, they have a hard time getting people involved on boards like the Parks Board. Do you want to know what's going on with the parks? Do you like parks? You can be in charge of what happens to that. And everyone should be involved. You matter. You matter more than you think you matter. And I'm talking to every single person listening to this right now. You matter so much. And I hope you remember that the next time you think, I can't be involved.
Well, we pulled it off. This was a huge undertaking. All these debates, all of the different partners that came together, just an amazing piece of work.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you so
Good
much.
job. And I want to give you the same opportunity that I've accorded everyone else. Except now you're not talking to just one district.
And I've really loved the questions that you asked everyone. I've learned something on every broadcast that you've done here. How do you pick the questions?
I just talk to folks and try and listen. And again, I'm trying to make it not the 30,000 foot level. That's where we do have to be. But when the boots hit the ground, what's going to happen to folks who don't have that voice at the 30,000 level and Oz lands on top of them? And maybe they should have done more due diligence, and maybe they should have done more research, and maybe they should have registered to vote, but they're still impacted.
Right. Well, and let me
what
ask you this question. What question do you think we did not ask that should have been asked?
I think the moderators did a wonderful job, and now I'm playing journalist as well. You only have 60 seconds.
It's tough.
You only have 60 seconds. I would have liked to hear more specifics in each district, but there's a lot to cover. So to talk about something that isn't one of the major issues, when that's where you're going to get your numbers from, that's tough to do.
Mhm.
So I get it. But as again, uh, within the community of District 2, which is a little different, and we had a little, we have some stuff going on there that I know about because I live there. And so
Yeah.
we talked specifically about instances where windows were being broken, and we know who did it, and the police aren't doing anything about it, and council's not doing anything about it. We talked specifically about instances where people came, and the people came out, and then they wanted to talk and share their personal experiences about it because they knew that their voice was going to be heard.
Yeah.
And that's important, I think, to do that. Tough to do.
It is tough, but
tough
looking
to
at it, I
do.
think you're right. I think we could have gone more specific. It's hard because you have to balance, they are serving the whole city, but focusing on the district.
Yeah.
It's
And
tough.
so, that's just my thought on that, but that does not take away from the validity and the wonderful work that our moderators did,
Yeah.
asking the questions that our candidates did, by showing up, and having questions fired at them, And so, I really enjoyed this. Previously, there have been debates all over the place. This debate over here, this debate, and not
And there
that
will in the future next year.
and there, it's not that's not okay. That's fine, but I just enjoyed the fact that there was an effort put together to say we want to inform our communities and we want to collaborate with partners to make this happen. And so,
And let me just say that, sometimes it feels like the media, reporters, journalists, TV stations are so far. I really respect what you do, getting everybody involved and really speaking to the issues and explaining the things. And I think that that's really needed right now. And especially going into an election season, the best reporters listen to the community. So, if you give that feedback to me or to anybody else on the panel, we're happy to take it. We're happy to talk to you. We're another resource to get that needle moving.
all right. Well, now you're still under the gun. I want you to talk to our audience, whether it's all 5 or 4 debates, whether it's putting this thing together, anything that you'd like to share that you think is important for our listening audience to know right now from the executive producer.
We are
of
all
these
just
debates.
people. We are all just people, and we are all doing our best. The candidates are doing their best. The reporters are doing their best. And, we have our flaws and limitations, and I hope you'll be patient with that. It's important to hold everyone accountable, but be compassionate. And I think that if we were more compassionate as a society, we'd get along a little bit better. That's my Zen 30,000 foot view. I'm sure that's not what you were expecting, but that's kind of what I've been reflecting on,
Whatever it is. So we did like the University of Washington, Oregon football game. We got on the field and we went a little long, and it took a little while for us to get out, but this was cool.
Very cool. Absolutely.
And so we decided to run on the field and take a little bit longer. Thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you.
Again, that's it. That's all the time that we have. Thank you for joining us for all of these debates. Again, you'll be able to go back on Rainier Avenue Radio and see everything. Plus, we're going to break these down into vignettes where if you need to get this information in 2 minutes, just because that's the way your life rolls, we're going to give you the opportunity to see those highlights as well. Starting on November 1st, our broadcasting, we're going to be airing pretty much all day long these debates and other things associated with this election. Don't forget to vote. If you haven't register to vote. Make sure that you do that. This is an important election and your vote matters. That's it. That's all the time that I have. Big shout out to Seattle City Club and King 5 and Crosscut and Fox 13 and KUOW and especially Converge Media Lavoy. Thank you, sir, for being on point and making sure, whatever I look like, I look clean. Can't do anything about the gray. And also to Kim, thank you so much for having a difficult job. And to our break, Daniel Bellis, producer, excellent job. everyone involved, that the Rainier Avenue Radio side, the Converge Media side. This is what we do. This is how we get down. So until next time, remember, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you cannot, you're probably right. I'm out.